Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support. Chapter 1, The Trait System. On an autumn afternoon, the warm sunlight bathed the Hokage building, shining over its time-worn, weathered exterior that had stood for decades. Inside, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, clad in his ceremonial Hokage robe, swiftly flipped through the graduates of the 46th Year Ninja Academy and the list of open spots in ninja squads on his desk. Matching each gain in strengths and weaknesses, he carefully formed balanced teams and assigned suitable jonin instructors. The past 2 years had seen increasing turbulence in the shinobi world. Frequent small-scale skirmishes between villages had left Hidden Leaf Village's squads with significant casualties. He knew all too well that well-structured teams were vital for mission success, survival rates, and overall combat effectiveness. Whether preparing for an impending war or ensuring the safety of his subordinates, every squad formation required the utmost caution. Over an hour passed as he meticulously reviewed his draft multiple times, ensuring it was the best possible arrangement. One by one, he began summoning the jonin team leaders: Okimeki Chosa, Aburame Shibi, Minato no Mikaze, Amino Ikaku. Before he knew it, evening was approaching. As another knock sounded at the door, he looked up at the final jonin he would meet today. The young man, around 18 or 19, stood just over 180 centimeters tall. His lean yet well-built frame was likely due to rigorous training. His short, golden hair and striking features could have easily captivated many young Hidden Leaf Village women, if not for the dark circles under his eyes, which dulled his otherwise handsome face, making him appear utterly exhausted. "Good afternoon, Hokage-sama," he greeted with fatigue, raising a hand lazily in salute. Late-night training had stretched until the early hours, and though he had tried to catch some sleep that afternoon, he had barely rested before being summoned to the Hokage building. How was he supposed to keep up with this? "You should relax once in a while. Training is more effective when balanced with rest," Hiruzen remarked, well aware of K's relentless training habits. Without dwelling on the young man's weary demeanor, he got straight to the point. "I've discussed with Inoichi and Shikaku, we're transferring you from the analysis team to a standard combat division. Here's your reassignment letter and details on your new team." "Understood." K accepted the documents, slipping the letter into his ninja tool pouch while glancing through the files on his assigned subordinates. Inoichi had already mentioned the transfer, so he had been expecting it. Leading a team of genin, taking on 1 or 2 missions a month, and having plenty of downtime, it sounded like a perfect opportunity to take it easy. However, when his eyes landed on the 3 names listed, his brows lifted in mild surprise. Yui Kurenai, Might Guy, and Shiranui Gemma. Had these 3 ever been on the same team before? Something felt off. Wasn't Genma supposed to be in a squad with Ebisu? And weren't they from different graduating years? The new leaves of Hidden Leaf Village can only grow strong with the guidance of their predecessors, just as the will of fire is passed down through generations. "Now, it's your turn to lead the next generation," Hiruzen declared, making no effort to explain the rationale behind the unusual team composition. Instead, he simply reinforced the ideals of the will of fire. "Rest assured, Hokage-sama. I will do my best to guide them," K responded, suppressing his doubts and putting away his usual laid-back demeanor, giving a proper assurance. Satisfied with the response, Hiruzen gave a simple instruction: to report to the jonin standby station tomorrow and then head to Training Ground 4 to meet the team, before waving him off. Stepping out of the Hokage building, K exchanged a few greetings with familiar ninja before making his way toward his clan's district. Halfway there, a sudden mechanical voice echoed in his mind. "System repair complete, database sorted, energy absorption progress, 100%, system awakening complete, career trait system activated, personal panel unlocked, detection ability activated, trait extraction, gifting, duplication, upgrading, and removal functions activated, career binding complete, bound career, ninja. By completing career missions and career-related events, there is a chance to obtain opportunities for trait extraction, gifting, duplication, upgrading, downgrading, and removal. Newcomer reward unlocked, 3 trait extractions, 1 gifting opportunity." Steps faltered slightly, his expression shifting for the briefest moment before returning to normal. As if nothing had happened, he stopped by a familiar restaurant to pick up a quick meal before heading home. Inside, he placed his palm on the floor, forming a hand seal. Anti-detection barrier, activate. With a faint hum, a translucent blue barrier enveloped the room. The intricate symbols etched into the surface of the barrier pulsed gently, sealing off all external interference. Standing in the center of the living room, his expression fluctuated before he finally exhaled a long breath and sat down in front of the low table. He had imagined many times how he would react when the system finally activated. Perhaps he would curse at it for arriving 19 years late, or maybe he would laugh and cry, venting all his bottled-up frustration and excitement. But maybe, after so many years, all those feelings had been ground away by time. Now that the moment had come, he found himself far calmer than he had expected. Host, Yamanaka, Career, Ninja, Active Traits, Transmigrator, Red, Yin Release Mastery, Purple, Handsome, Blue, Somewhat Skilled, Green, Inactive Traits, None, Trait Extraction, 3, Trait Gifting, 1, Transmigrator, Red. As someone who has lived 2 lives, your soul and mental strength are significantly enhanced, with increased growth speed and a higher potential limit. Yin Release Mastery, Purple. Years of relentless study and training have granted you near-perfect control over yin release techniques, improving your efficiency in learning, molding, modifying, and creating them. Your speed, power, and effectiveness of yin release jutsu are greatly increased, as is your resistance to them. Handsome, Blue. Favored by the world, you were born with striking looks, naturally enhancing your charisma and appeal to the opposite sex. Somewhat Skilled, Green. Years of probing through ninja memories have granted you a vast amount of information and knowledge. Through continuous practice, you have gained a foundational grasp of various ninjutsu types and elements, slightly improving your learning speed and memory retention. A satisfied smile tugged at the corner of his lips as he read through the descriptions. Seems like all those years of grinding finally paid off. Wasting no time, he immediately initiated a trait extraction. Chapter 2, A Hole in Your Head, obtained. Stealthy Crawler, White, Big Brainstorm, Black, Shout and It Comes, Purple. Stealthy Crawler, White, slightly enhances stealth effects and movement speed during specific sneaky actions, while significantly lowering personal presence. Big Brainstorm, Black, greatly increases the probability of unexpected head injuries, significantly reduces skull hardness and recovery speed, and slightly raises fatality risk. Shout and It Comes, Purple, grants precise control over chakra, allowing for the elimination of complex hand seals when proficient in a jutsu. By simply clapping hands and shouting its name, the jutsu can be used instantly. This significantly enhances chakra control and jutsu activation speed. What the hell are these? Furrowed his brows. When he first saw the trait, Somewhat Skilled, he already had a vague feeling that his system might be a bit abstract. But he never expected it to be this abstract. Aside from the last one, which seemed somewhat related to the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama, though the name was odd, the effect was quite decent. The first 2 traits were simply beyond words. Stealthy Crawler. Using this would practically mean forfeiting any chance of finding a partner. And Big Brainstorm, was it seriously referring to getting actual holes in his head? Is this trait specifically designed to get people killed? A thought crossed his mind as he glanced at the trait gifting chance from the newcomer reward. Maybe one day, if he ever fell out with someone, he could arrange a little surprise for them. A purity buff like this would probably be best used on an enemy. After letting his mind wander for a bit, he selected, Shout and It Comes. In an instant, a deep and indescribable sense of enlightenment surged through him. His entire chakra network seemed to be imprinted clearly in his mind. He could sense every strand of chakra flowing through his body with absolute precision, moving as effortlessly as a flexed finger. The jutsu he had painstakingly honed over years of training now felt like second nature, so natural that only the simplest guidance was needed to unleash them. Mind Puppet Switch Cursed Seal. Forming a single seal, he pointed at a training puppet in the corner of the room. The motionless puppet suddenly came to life, stretching its limbs before executing a smooth and precise taijutsu routine. Seal simplification and one-handed seals. This is a godsend for ambush tactics. Impressed, he continued experimenting with his jutsu. The Yamanaka clan had unique hand signs for their secret techniques, variations of the hare and bird seals. These signs were designed to speed up the manipulation of yin chakra, allowing users to deploy their clan's jutsu more swiftly. Functionally, they were flawless. But the problem was, they were way too recognizable. Any enemy familiar with the Yamanaka clan's techniques would immediately start moving the moment they saw these seals. After all, the Yamanaka clan's abilities involved soul manipulation. If the jutsu missed, the user's soul would need time to return to their body, leaving them vulnerable. In that critical window, even a child could take their life. But now, Without the need for those distinctive seals, his jutsu would become almost impossible to predict. He spent half the day testing various jutsu. Spinning a Rasengan in his palm, he felt the stable, high-speed chakra rotation, and a grin crept onto his lips. Every jutsu he commonly used could now be executed with one-handed or simplified seals, cutting activation time in half. For techniques he was highly familiar with, he could even achieve clap hands, shout the name, and release instantly. Even for those he was less adept at, though he couldn't completely eliminate hand signs, his speed and control had improved significantly. In the fast-paced battles of a ninja, even a fraction of a second could determine the outcome of a fight. Among Hidden Leaf Village's Jonin, he was already considered strong. With his hand seal speed now doubled, his combat ability had undoubtedly risen even further. I wonder if I'm at Kage level now. No, stay humble. Can't let this get to my head. He kept adjusting his mindset, repeatedly reminding himself not to act recklessly like a certain Uchiha. After all, he didn't have Suigetsu to take hits for him, Jugo or Karen to keep him alive, or an older brother like Itachi, or a godly ancestor like Otsutsuki Hagoromo. If he got carried away, who knew if he'd survive? Besides, Kage-level strength wasn't just about speed. Combat experience, tactical intelligence, jutsu combinations, physical endurance, reflexes, chakra reserves, there were so many factors. The road ahead is long. But at least in the upcoming Third Great Ninja War, as long as I don't charge headfirst into an enemy battalion, I should be fine. He let out a sigh, his nerves, which had been tense due to the approaching war, relaxing slightly. Having lived through the Second Great Ninja War, he knew better than anyone how brutal the battlefield was. It was a hell filled with blood and screams, a slaughterhouse that stripped away humanity, leaving only killing and numbness. Even after all these years, the memories of those battlefields still sent chills down his spine. With a single hand seal, he dispelled the 5 shadow clones that had been training deep within his residence. The exhaustion from their accumulated fatigue and stress hit him all at once, his body immediately feeling the weight of it. Too lazy to resist the drowsiness, he casually lifted the barrier inside his house, hastily finished a meal, and collapsed into his soft bedding. He slept soundly through the night. The next morning, the cool morning mist slowly dispersed under the rising sun. Birds chirped noisily outside the window, flapping their wings as they perched on tree branches. Waking up, glanced at the clock on the wall, which already pointed past 7. Stretching lazily, he yawned. The sudden surge in strength had given him an overwhelming sense of security, allowing him to sleep better than ever. Relaxing even a little, and my biological clock's already out of whack. Rubbing his face, he got up to wash and dress while once again pondering over the system's functions. The system had made it clear that traits could be obtained through extraction, gifting, duplication, upgrading, and removal. These opportunities could be earned by completing professional missions or major events related to his profession. As a Jonin, his regular missions were self-explanatory. But major events? The Great Ninja War? A historical turning point? Some big movie-level crisis? Whichever it was, it seemed like he'd have to throw himself into dangerous situations to trigger them. Fastening his ninja tool pouch and adjusting his gear, he turned toward the door. Major events could wait. For now, he had a group of geinin who had been waiting for him all morning. It was time to test if regular ninja missions had a decent drop rate. Chapter 3, The Black Drake's first victim. The streets of Hidden Leaf Village near noon were bustling with people under the warm sunlight. Strolled towards the Jonin standby station, savoring a red bean chestnut yokan. His gaze drifted across the merchants, civilians, and ninjas along the way. Ordinary villagers rarely had any tags, and even when they did, they were mostly useless white or green ones. In contrast, ninjas had a higher probability of possessing them, though not all did, many were blank slates. No matter the world, there are always more ordinary people, mused, tossing the yokan wrapper into a trash bin just as he was about to step into the Jonin standby station. A 3-seater wooden sofa suddenly shot out of the entrance with a sharp whooshing sound. Before he could even register what had happened, a powerful surge of chakra erupted from within. Then, boom. Every glass window shattered simultaneously, a deep crack ran from the floor to the entrance, and even the walls tilted and crumbled. In mere moments, the once intact Jonin standby station had turned into a condemned building. A gust of wind quickly dispersed the thick dust, revealing 2 figures still locked in confrontation. Kushina and Danzo. Swish, 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 3 root ninjas clad in Anbu uniforms and animal masks instantly appeared behind Danzo, assuming attack stances against Kushina. His eyes narrowed slightly. In a single step, he appeared behind Kushina. Alongside him arrived Chosa and Dodo from the Akimaki clan, Suzaku from the Nara clan, Gekko from the Inyuzuke clan, and Murakumo from the Kurama clan. As for the other Jonin who had originally been in the standby station, whether out of fear of the Hokage advisor's authority or simply unwilling to be entangled in high-level conflicts, they had all vanished without a trace. Danzo. I've already made myself clear, I will never hand over the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques to you. Now realizing she wasn't alone, Kushina's already fierce presence intensified further. Hearing this, he immediately understood. No wonder, aside from the Inoshikacho clans aligned with the Hokage, even the Kurama clan head had chosen to stand behind Kushina. Danzo must have crossed a line that the ninja clans couldn't tolerate. An unstable Jinchuriki who cannot control her emotions will only bring disaster to the village. Danzo's cold eyes held not a shred of emotion. I will request from Hiruzen that you undergo root training. Without sparing Choza or the others a single glance, he simply dropped those words and turned to leave. Kushina looked momentarily stunned. Even Choza and the others were slightly taken aback by how easily he backed down. Hadn't witnessed the entire conflict, so he couldn't determine Danzo's true motives. But the way this old schemer had so readily given up suggested that his real objective wasn't the Uzumaki sealing techniques. In fact, he likely wasn't even serious about forcing Kushina into root training. After all, even if Hiruzen had been kicked in the head by a donkey, there was no way he'd allow Danzo anywhere near the control of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Couldn't fully decipher Danzo's intentions, but he was certain of one thing, this old man was up to no good. Before, he might have been helpless against Danzo's authority and influence. But now. System, gift Shimura Danzo the trait, Big Brainstorm. A flicker of black light, visible only to shot into Danzo's body in the blink of an eye. Danzo, mid-stride, felt a brief chill at the back of his head. Assuming it was just a lingering hostility from Kushina and the others, he remained completely unaware of the impending disaster. Crack. A wooden beam from the collapsing Jonin standby station suddenly snapped with a sharp noise and came crashing down. The entire structure began to collapse rapidly. The moment the beam broke, and the others instinctively used body flicker to escape. The three root ninjas trailing behind Danzo reacted a step too slow. The three ninjas exchanged glances. Seeing no sign of Danzo, they hurriedly began digging through the collapsed trouble. No way, this thing is that effective? Was both shocked and thrilled. The black trait's effect was downright explosive. He had barely attached it to Danzo, and the guy was already buried alive. Ha 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 ha. That's what happens to people who do too many bad things. Kushina stood with her hands on her hips, openly mocking the buried Danzo. Her laughter grew even more gleeful when the three root members, after exhausting every ounce of strength, finally managed to drag out a battered, bloodied, and disheveled Danzo from the wreckage. Danzo, his head throbbing and vision spinning, instinctively circulated chakra to check his body. A moment ago, as he had been using body flicker, his calf had suddenly cramped for no apparent reason, causing the collapsing beam to slam directly into his forehead. If he hadn't reinforced his vital points with chakra at the last second, he would probably be dead already. Is this a side effect of my transplanted Sharingan? Chakra depletion causing muscle and nerve dysfunction? Finding no other abnormalities, Danzo could only attribute the incident to the after-effects of his ocular implants. He had no time to bother with Kushina, who had deliberately stepped closer just to laugh in his face. Forcing himself to lift an arm, he made a vague hand signal. The three root ninjas hastily performed first aid, roughly bandaging his wounds before carrying him away toward the root headquarters. Watched Danzo's retreating figure, eyes filled with contemplation. Name, Shimura Danzo. Career, Ninja. Traits, Single-Eyed 3 Tomoe, Blue. Wind Style Mastery, Blue. Brainwashing Specialist, Blue. Sealing Mastery, Green. Ruthless Strategist, White. Cold and Merciless, White. Big Brainstorm, Black. In terms of sheer number of tags, Danzo had the most I'd ever seen. Especially those unrelated to combat, Brainwashing Specialist for mind control, Sealing Proficiency for behavioral control, Ruthless Strategist for sacrificing relationships in favor of objectives, and Cold and Merciless for enhancing intimidation at the cost of humanity. Stacking all these effects together, no wonder Root had been able to run rampant within Hidden Leaf Village for decades. What a nice day today. Ah, thanks, everyone. Kushina stretched with satisfaction, then turned to thank those who had stood behind her. Her radiant smile bore no trace of the fiery-tempered red-hot habanero from moments ago. No need for thanks, Uzumaki Jonin. Murakumo gave a slight nod before turning to leave with the composed demeanor of a clan leader. He had only sided with Kushina because Danzo's demand for Uzumaki clan secrets had crossed the line for ninja families. Had Danzo chosen a different excuse to provoke her, he would have left the Jonin standby station much earlier. Kushina paid no mind to his aloofness. After exchanging a few words with Choza and the others, she suddenly smacked on the shoulder with a grin. Pig girl, long time no see, you know. Chapter 4, I'm not Sejuani. gave Kushina an exasperated look. And what was with that ridiculous nickname, Pig Girl? He was a grown man, male, straight, not some Sejuni riding a giant boar. How did that nickname even get attached to him? Oh, but you were so cute when you were little. Anyone would have mistaken you for a girl. Kushina chuckled, recalling the amusing memory. Rolled his eyes. You were probably the only one who thought that. Back when Kushina transferred into the academy, as her classmate, he was one of the few who didn't mock her for her fiery red hair. But right after their very first class ended, she had run up to him, flustered, and asked why the girls' restroom was, if he could go with her. Clearly, his delicate features as a child had caused a serious misunderstanding. Seeing the 8-year-old girl standing there, full of embarrassment and uncertainty, who already had the mind of an adult, couldn't bear to make things even more awkward for her. So, he simply got up and led the way. Thinking back on it now, their first encounter was pure fated disaster. What brings you to the Jonin standby station? Kushina clasped her hands behind her back, her bright face showing a hint of anticipation. Cleared his throat. Ahem. I've been reassigned to the Standard Combat Division as a squad leader. He pulled out a scroll from the pouch at his waist, containing his official reassignment orders. Seeing Suzaku, the duty officer at the station today, glance over, he casually tossed the scroll over. Eh? That's great. We'll get to see each other more often. Yeah, but we can catch up later. My poor squad members have been waiting all morning. Leaving already after just meeting? Humphrey, fine, I'll let you off this time, but make sure to report in early tomorrow. Report in? Yeah, see you tomorrow. Glanced at the now ruined standby station. Noticing how Kushina suddenly froze, counting on her fingers as she calculated the damages she'd have to pay for, he quickly waved at Chosa and Dodo before vanishing in a flicker of movement. Guy and Genma practiced tirelessly, sweat dripping down their faces as they focused on basic taijutsu and precision kunai throwing. Kurenai sat atop a wooden training post used for target practice, idly swinging her legs. She listened to her new teammates' spirited training shouts while, not far off in the third training ground, the sounds of ninjutsu explosions from combat drills echoed in the distance. With a deep sigh, she let out a breath of frustration. Her first year after graduation had already been unlucky. One of her teammates had quit being a ninja, forcing her into a dull logistics job. Now, finally reassigned, she was happy to see her new teammates were all familiar faces, strong, reliable, and unlikely to quit. But just when things were looking up, their squad leader was late for their very first meeting. Sure, the orders had stated together at the fourth training ground in the morning, but they hadn't specified a time. Still, it was noon already. Why was her ninja career cursed with so much bad luck? As she sat lost in thought, a faint, almost orchid-like fragrance drifted through the air with the autumn breeze, brushing past her nose. Before she could even identify what kind of flower it was, a sudden disturbance rippled through the training ground. The once flat earth beneath them began to rise and bulge. Guy and Genma immediately sensed the anomaly and leaped back without hesitation. Before Kurenai could even jump down from the training post, the ground suddenly burst open. A massive python, its head alone spanning 3 meters in diameter, slithered out at terrifying speed. Faced with a monstrous serpent, an overwhelming sense of danger swept through her entire body. Every cell in her being trembled, every nerve screamed in alarm, yet she was paralyzed, unable to move, fearing that even the slightest action would draw the beast's attention. But fate was not on her side. The python's massive head lifted slightly, its cold, unblinking eyes locking on to her. In the next moment, it lunged forward, ready to strike. The sheer terror of imminent death nearly drowned out all rational thought. Move. Move. Move now. She screamed internally, and in that instant, the numbness in her limbs broke. Strength surged through her body as she tried to escape, but the python's speed was far greater than hers. The rancid stench of its maw filled her nostrils, the very scent of death itself. Ha! A sharp battle cry split the air, and in a blur of green, a figure shot in from the side. A powerful kick struck the serpent's head, forcing it to veer off course by 2 feet, just enough for Kurenai to barely avoid its fangs as it lunged past her. Boom! The missed strike sent up a cloud of dust as the python crashed into the ground, letting out a furious hiss. Its tail whipped violently, showing no sign of injury despite the powerful attack. Genma, knowing full well that they were no match for this beast, grabbed Kurenai, who had barely dodged death, and sprinted away at full speed. As he ran, he hurled a string of smoke bombs behind them, shouting back over his shoulder. Run! Guy, having landed his strike, wasted no time and immediately followed suit, retreating alongside them. Perhaps because she had just brushed past death, Kurenai's mind had never been clearer. The moment Genma's words fell, she quickly added, head toward the third training ground. There are Jonin there. Who has a red signal flare? Quick. Got it. Guy reached for his ninja pouch, fingers brushing against the signal flare, but before he could even pull it out, the entire scene shattered like a broken mirror. Their momentum carried them forward, sending them tumbling far ahead. Barely managing to steady themselves, they found themselves staring in disbelief. The giant python was gone. The ground was untouched, as if no destruction had ever occurred. The training field was completely intact. Clap. 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 The sound of slow, deliberate applause came from the side. Emerging from the shade of a tree, dressed in a black combat uniform with a Jonin vest over it, stepped forward. Patience, courage, excellent teamwork, and sound judgment in a crisis. Congratulations, you've passed the test. I'm Yamanaka, your new squad leader. I look forward to working with you. Ah. Youth never disappoints those who strive for it. I'm Might Guy, please take care of us, sensei. Despite having been thoroughly shaken by the hyper-realistic Genjutsu, Guy still gave a bright thumbs up, his teeth gleaming. I'm Shiranui Genma. Please guide us well. Genma forced himself upright from the ground, bowing properly in greeting. Yui Kurenai. Please take care of us, sensei. Her pale face slowly regained some color as she bowed, though internally, she was fuming. Starting a test without warning? That was way too cruel. She really thought she was about to die back there. But what an incredibly powerful Genjutsu. Chapter 5, Traits of Blue. Since she specialized in Genjutsu, Kurenai had a far deeper understanding of it than Guy and Genma. And the more she understood, the clearer it became just how powerful the Genjutsu this young Jonin had just cast truly was. That subtle, unique fragrance had drawn them into an illusion without them even realizing it, using a technique similar to scent-based Genjutsu. Within a single breath, it had disrupted and influenced their sense of smell, sight, touch, taste, and hearing, yet none of them had noticed they had fallen under a Genjutsu. Just this alone was already beyond what an ordinary A-rank illusion could achieve. Then there was that completely unreasonable, bone-chilling killing intent, as if they were facing a real giant serpent. It clearly affected something beyond the five senses, triggering the deepest, most primal human instinct for detecting danger. And the last, most critical point, this was a multi-target illusion. It simultaneously affected all three of them, maintaining perfect synchronization so there were no inconsistencies in their perceptions or communication. This had to be a complex Genjutsu with a Ni-rank illusion at its core. The level of control and effectiveness. It might even rival an S-rank Genjutsu. Her own squad leader had actually used a Genjutsu this difficult and powerful, likely comparable to an S-rank technique, just to deal with 3 rookie genin. The more she thought about it, the worse it seemed. You look like you're thinking something pretty rude, remarked, narrowing his eyes slightly as he bent forward, meeting Kurenai's ruby-like gaze. And no, of course not. She averted her eyes, flatly denying the silent complaints she had just been making about her own squad leader. Seeing that his sudden attack and quick-witted words had successfully made the 3 rookies forget all about his earlier tardiness, inwardly noted how easy kids were to fool. As he turned to walk out of the training ground, he called back over his shoulder. Since you passed the test, let's celebrate the formation of our squad. My treat, grilled skewers. Let's go. Decided then. Handstand walk all the way to Yakiniku. If you can't do it, 2,000 kicks. Guy responded with his usual enthusiasm. Sensei said grilled skewers, not barbecue. That means we're going to Shushuya, Genma mumbled around the senbon in his mouth, his half-lidded eyes showing mild correction. Oh? I heard it's really expensive. Just 1 plate of venison costs 50 ryo. Kurenai's eyes lit up slightly as she secretly resolved to set aside her image for the night and eat to her heart's content. After all, it would be a waste not to make up for the shock she had just suffered. Hearing their casual chatter behind him, smirked slightly. Their mental resilience wasn't bad. The 3 of them undoubtedly had talent. Might Guy had the strongest potential, with 3 traits: burning youth, blue, extreme recovery, blue, and thick-browed kappa, white. The first gave him an unparalleled level of self-discipline and indomitable willpower, the second allowed him to recover from exhaustion far faster while reducing the risk of hidden injuries, and the third, despite lowering his charm and chakra stability, increased his focus and efficiency in taijutsu training. The combined effects of these traits put him far beyond the vast majority of Hidden Leaf Village's shinobi. Kurenai came next in terms of talent, possessing strong mental power, blue, and illusion enhancement, green. The former increased her mental strength and endurance, while the latter improved the effectiveness of her Genjutsu. If developed properly, she might avoid another infamous Itachi schooling her in Genjutsu moment in the future. As for Genma, he had only 1 trait, influenced by greatness, blue. Its effect significantly boosted his learning speed and potential, but only when he had someone guiding and pushing him. Though he had fewer traits, when put to proper use, his talent might not be any weaker than Kurenai's. Mindset and talent, these three had no shortage of either. It was certain that as long as he put in even a little effort in guiding them, and if they didn't fall along the way like some did in the original story, their future achievements would surpass what had originally been written. Looking at 10-year-old Kurenai, 11-year-old Guy, and 12-year-old Genma, he couldn't help but sigh. Back when he watched the anime, all he saw was passion and camaraderie. But after spending more than a decade struggling through the blood-stained, war-ridden shinobi world, the only thing he could see now was cruelty. 11 or 12 years old, back in his previous life, kids this age wouldn't have even graduated elementary school. But here in Hidden Leaf Village, they were already expected to face combat and bloodshed. This damn world. There's really nothing to like about it, he muttered inwardly. Having lived 2 lifetimes, he had long passed the age of youthful rebellion. But whenever he encountered things that felt utterly wrong, he still couldn't help but ask himself, should he do something about it? As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Before, when he lacked the strength, all he could do was drift along with the shinobi world's rules, not daring to step out of line. But now that he had the system, 50 ryo for a plate of venison. That means one meal would cost as much as several D-rank missions, Guy gasped, continuing his handstand walk while struggling to count just how much money they were about to spend. Stop calculating. I heard before that if you don't order anything too extravagant, the average cost per person is around 3,000 ryo, about 3 times more than yakiniku. 3,000? Is this place a scam? Guy, who had never come from a wealthy background, was so startled that he nearly lost balance, almost face-planting into the ground. Kurenai glanced cautiously at K, who had remained silent for a while now. Seeing the heaviness in his expression, she assumed he hadn't realized just how expensive Shashuya was and had simply wanted to treat his subordinates to something nice, only to be just as shocked by the price as they were. After much internal debate, she decided to temporarily forgive him for almost scaring her to death earlier. Carefully, she spoke up to ease the tension. Sensei, actually, I think ramen is really delicious too. Ah, ha ha ha. Paused, then immediately understood her meaning and couldn't help but laugh. He reached out and ruffled the little girl's hair. Watching her blush, wrinkle her nose, and hastily fix her hair, he made a decision. He really should do something. Not for that vague and pretentious so-called will of fire. Not for the ridiculous and impossible dream of world peace. But simply because today's sunlight was warm, the breeze was gentle, and the people he met were just too endearing. Chapter 6, Memory Master. The food at Shashuya was even more delicious than Kurenai, Guy, and Genma had imagined. When they found out that this restaurant actually had shares owned by K, not only did they get to eat for free, but they also received a generous dividend every month. Without hesitation, the 3 of them decided to indulge themselves. Even Kurenai, who usually ate with the most restraint, ended up eating so much that she could barely sit up straight, sighing internally at the situation. To think she had once worried that a jonin, who was ruthless enough to use a strong Ganjutsu combo on his own allies, would be short on money. She had really been too naive. Sensei, when are we going to start taking on missions? Genma asked after finishing his meal, curious about their next steps. Hearing this, Kurenai and Guy also turned their eager eyes toward K. Both Genma and Guy hadn't taken on any missions for a while due to Ebisu's transfer to a different post. Their pockets were practically empty, making their daily lives quite frugal. Although Kurenai had spent nearly a year in logistics and had some savings, she had barely done any missions before being reassigned. Now, she was just as eager to get back into action. Seeing the anticipation in their eyes, K, who was also looking forward to testing the system's drop rate through professional missions, didn't delay. We can head over to the mission office in a bit and take a look, he said. The flames of youth are about to blaze once again. Guy suddenly leaped from his seat, bursting with enthusiasm. However, before he could strike his usual passionate pose, he clutched his overstuffed stomach, bending over slightly in discomfort. Noticing the unimpressed look from Genma, he remained unfazed and quickly added, even in the prime of youth, occasional setbacks are inevitable. But don't worry, once we start our mission, I'll give it 200% of my passion and sweat. Sigh. Genma let out a long breath. Even after being teammates for 2 years, he still found Guy's personality hard to handle. Kurenai rested her chin on her hand, watching the lively scene with a smile. She had a feeling that the days ahead were going to be very interesting. Over 10 kilometers southwest of Hidden Leaf Village, a massive wild boar, weighing at least 1,000 kilograms and resembling a moving fortress, rampaged through the area. Its body was riddled with over a dozen kunai, though they barely pierced its thick flesh. Its blood-red eyes glowed with fury as it charged around wildly, demolishing fences and simple traps as if they were made of paper. Guy and Genma launched continuous feints to distract it, creating an opening for Kurenai to cast her Genjutsu. After several attempts, she finally succeeded in trapping the boar's senses with the false surroundings jutsu, luring it into the prearranged trap. As it fell into a deep pit, the steel spikes lining the bottom pierced through its massive body. The boar let out agonized howls for over 10 minutes before finally succumbing to its injuries. Exhausted, the three wiped the sweat from their foreheads and sighed in relief. Carefully took note of their strengths and weaknesses during the operation. Just as he was about to give feedback, a familiar system prompt echoed in his mind. D-rank professional mission completed. Detail: eliminate the crop-destroying wild boar. Reward: none. First time completion. Reward: 2 trade extractions, 1 gifting opportunity. Paused for a moment. He hadn't expected that the system would consider the mission complete just from slaying the boar, even before they returned to Hidden Leaf Village to submit their report. Moreover, since this was his first completed professional mission, he had directly received 2 trait draw chances and 1 gifting opportunity. As for the lack of rewards from a standard D-rank mission, that wasn't surprising to him. Luck played a huge role in these things, after all. Besides, the probability of obtaining valuable rewards was likely tied to the difficulty of the mission itself. If even a simple, time-consuming D-rank mission, where most of their effort went into traveling, could provide frequent rewards, then that would be far too easy. His gaze landed on the 2 available trait draws in his personal panel, and without hesitation, he decided to use them immediately. Obtained: Memory Palace, blue, fragile yet tenacious, white. Memory Palace, blue. A combination of innate talent and training allows the brain to develop optimally, granting mastery over the Memory Palace technique. Enhances learning speed, speed reading ability, and memory retention, fragile yet tenacious, white. Until your body reaches Jonin level durability, the probability of encountering strong enemies and life-threatening situations increases slightly. However, so does the chance of a last-minute breakthrough in survival. 1 blue, 1 white. Not bad, he mused, reading through the descriptions before decisively activating Memory Palace. For both studying and research, memory was an invaluable asset. The stronger it was, the better. As for fragile yet tenacious, it seemed rather useless to him now that he had outgrown the rookie phase. This kind of trait was probably only helpful for chosen protagonists who could somehow endure getting thrown into death traps repeatedly. Otherwise, no matter how high the breakthrough or survival rate, it wouldn't matter if the system kept throwing stronger enemies at him non-stop. Compatibility detected. Memory Palace, blue, somewhat skilled, green, fusion? Yes or no? Yes, fuse them. After a brief hesitation, chose to go ahead with it. This was his first time encountering trait fusion, but both traits were related to knowledge and memory. No matter how they combined, it shouldn't turn out to be a disaster, right? Suddenly, an overwhelming surge of memories boiled in his mind. Countless images flickered past like a high-speed slideshow. Even memories he had long forgotten, like those from when he was only 4 years old in his past life, became crystal clear. Kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, university. An enormous and intricate archive of memory sorted itself neatly into his newly formed Memory Palace. Among them, every detail of the Naruto anime he had once watched, along with all the discussions and theories he had read online, had been isolated and stored separately. Once his past life memories settled, his current life memories unfolded just as vividly. Even the ones he had extracted from Mother Ninja's minds while working in the interrogation division were now perfectly catalogued. The storm of memories gradually calmed, and as it did, the system's notification echoed in his mind. Fusion complete. Obtained. Memory Master of the Shinobi World, blue. Memory Master of the Shinobi World, blue. A perfected application of the Memory Palace grants near limitless memory capacity. Your vast recollection of 2 lifetimes provides deep insight into various life experiences, hidden secrets of the Shinobi world, and a broad understanding of ninjutsu and secret techniques. Enhances learning speed, speed reading ability, and memory retention. Holy shit. Feeling the sharp clarity of his memories, X's eyes sparkled with excitement. Chapter 7:07, Tragic Heroine at the Doorstep for a Transmigrator or Reincarnator. Knowing the storyline was the greatest advantage. And if one could remember the finer details of the plot, it became effortless to obtain things that ordinary people might struggle for years to acquire. Had been in the Naruto world for a full 9 years. At the time of his arrival, he had recorded all the story details he could recall, using sketches and shorthand notes to piece them together. Even now, he would occasionally take them out to review. Yet, even back then, The information he could remember was quite limited, mostly major plot points rather than intricate details of specific events. For example, he knew that Danzō had perceived Akatsuki as a threat and orchestrated Yahico's demise, directly pushing Nagato into darkness. However, the exact method he used and whether others were involved had long faded from his memory. Looks like I'll have my hands full soon. A faint, uncontrollable smile appeared on K's lips. If used correctly, the benefits it could bring were immeasurable. Sensei, the client is here. From a distance, Kurenai stood at the edge of a trap pit, standing on tiptoe and waving her hand. Her crisp voice pulled out of his pleasant daydream. Leaping down from the rooftop, he approached the large pit where the client was waiting. After ensuring the mission contract was signed and confirmed, he called over his 3 young students, who had just finished retrieving their kunai, steel wires, and shuriken, and they set off on their way back. Their 4 figures swiftly moved through the dense forest, taking the shortest route directly toward Hidden Leaf Village. Seizing the opportunity during their journey, he pointed out the mistakes and weaknesses that had surfaced during the mission. The biggest mistake was their failure to properly question the client for detailed intelligence before rushing off to face the mission target. Secondly, when they encountered the target, they failed to observe closely, leading to a misjudgment of its defenses. The wild boar's body bore numerous shallow wounds, marks likely inflicted by villagers using machetes and arrows. Given that adult villagers, accustomed to hard labor, could wield these weapons with considerable force, it should have been possible to roughly estimate the boar's durability and plan accordingly. Had they done so, they wouldn't have spent half the mission stabbing at the boar with kunai, only to enrage it instead of taking it down, almost getting injured in the process. Lastly, being a ninja meant having more than just direct confrontation as an option. Genma's pouch contained multiple potent hallucinogenic smoke bombs, and Kurenai carried strong anesthetics in her small medical kit. Even the wilderness beyond the village had plenty of toxic plants and venomous insects. They weren't illiterate villagers who relied solely on ancestral experience to survive. Catching a couple of poisonous bugs or gathering some toxic herbs, then following the simple formulas taught at the academy, would have been enough. If used effectively, they could have taken down not just a wild boar, but even an elephant. Kurenai, Guy, and Genma all hung their heads in embarrassment. The excitement of successfully completing their mission had completely vanished. Noticing their dejected expressions, K knew that teaching kids required both criticism and praise. With a shift in tone, he began to point out their strengths from the mission. What's commendable is your strong sense of teamwork. You trusted each other completely, and even though it was your first mission together, you made full use of each other's strengths. Your ability to adapt was also impressive. When you realized the original plan wouldn't work, you quickly used the dried-up reservoir to create a deep pit trap. Lastly, you were mindful of protecting the client's property and minimized unnecessary losses. That's something worth praising as well. Overall, I'd say I'm fairly satisfied with your performance. He smiled as he gave his final assessment. Yes. The 3 of them high-fived, silently vowing to perform even better on the next mission. After the brief excitement, Kurenai, ever perceptive, shifted the conversation back to the mission. Sensei, if you were in our position back when you were a Ganian, what would you have done? Obviously. Just one jutsu to end it instantly. What? But Genma's fire jutsu just made it only smell like roasted pork. How could a Ganian's jutsu possibly take down such a huge boar in one move? I'm from the Yamanaka clan. Controlling the boar to jump into a river and drown or making it charge into a mountain and die isn't exactly difficult. That's such a sneaky way to win. Ha ha ha. They laughed and chatted all the way until night fell, the sky turning pitch black as they finally arrived back in Hidden Leaf Village. After grabbing a meal at the newly opened ramen Akiraku, they set their meeting time for the next day before parting ways for the night. As K walked toward the Yamanaka clan's estate, he saw the warm glow of lights from his house in the distance. A question mark slowly formed in his mind. Forming a hand seal, he activated his sensory jutsu. The immense chakra inside his house was like a blazing sun, its terrifying aura barely concealed beneath the surface. In an instant, he identified the person inside. With such a distinct chakra signature, who else could it be but the infamous Red Autobanero? A loud crash came from inside the house. Sensing the probe of his sensory jutsu, Kushina practically flew out the door barefoot, leaping onto the wall. Her eyes locked onto K, standing at the end of the street. Kai finally waited long enough for you. Her voice, filled with excitement and grievance, sounded exactly like a tragic drama heroine reuniting with her lover after enduring countless hardships. A shiver ran down K's spine. He nearly turned around and bolted. What the hell? Since when did she talk like this? Soft rustling sounds came from the surrounding houses, nosy clan members clearly sneaking around to eavesdrop on the late-night commotion. Covering his face with one hand, he quickly used the body flicker, dragging Kushina inside the house. The door slammed shut just as he activated a layered sensory barrier around the room. He was certain that if he had been even a second slower, the clan would be gossiping tomorrow about the undeniable connection between K and the orphan of the Uzumaki clan. Wait, huh? Kushina stumbled as she was pulled inside. Watching K set up the barrier with practiced ease, her expression shifted from confusion to curiosity, then to suspicion in the span of 3 syllables. She instinctively crossed her arms over her chest, pretending to look scared. But in her eyes, there was a hint of excitement and anticipation. "You've gotta be kidding me." Felt like he was about to cough up blood. It was stuck in his throat, neither going up nor down. Chapter 8, I'm really glad I met you. Hey. What's with that disgusted and disdainful look on your face? Reeking of alcohol, Kushina unhappily lowered her arms from where they had been crossed over her chest. Sure, she was loud and brash, but she still had the looks and the figure of a beautiful girl. Was that expression really necessary? How much did you drink? Ignoring her complaint, glanced around the messy living room, feeling utterly speechless. The once clean and tidy coffee table was now covered with empty instant ramen cups filled with leftover broth and scattered beer bottles. Magazines and loosely placed ninja scrolls were spread across the sofa and floor. Even a few of his practice puppets, normally well kept, had been tossed around and left abandoned. Just a little. Noticing the mess, Kushina sobered up halfway, shrinking her neck back as she carefully peeked at K's expression. She muttered to herself, she really hadn't done anything, so how had the living room ended up like this? No matter how frustrated you are, cut back on the drinking. It's not good for you. Seeing the unease in her eyes, K swallowed the words he initially wanted to say and instead chose to show concern. Having known her for years, he understood her better than anyone. Kushina never touched alcohol, yet she had clearly downed a lot tonight. Something must have happened after her earlier conflict with Danzo that had upset her even more. With a single-handed sign of the Ram seal, K performed an advanced combination of the mind-body switch jutsu and mind-clone switch jutsu, the mind-puppet switch cursed seal jutsu. 5 humanoid puppets, each about a foot tall, suddenly flipped up from the floor, moving in sync as they clumsily but efficiently began tidying the room. The filthy coffee table was quickly wiped clean. The scattered magazines and scrolls were sorted and returned to their original places. Barefoot, Kushina hurriedly ran around, following the puppets and helping to clean up. From the way she eagerly moved about, someone unaware of the situation might have actually mistaken her for being naturally diligent. Just tell me, what do you need? Looked at Kushina, who was now grinning and trying to act cute, and sighed, already feeling defeated. Can we talk? Lend me a few million ryo, pretty please. Her tone was as sweet as honey, her demeanor coy and shy, nothing like the fierce, short-tempered red-hot habanero she was known to be. Hold on, you just collected rent in July. It's barely been 3 months, and you're broke already? Stared at her in disbelief. When Mundo passed away, she had left Kushina an incredibly generous inheritance. Just the dozen or so storefronts she owned in Hidden Leaf Village's commercial district brought in enough rental income each year to guarantee her a life of luxury. How had she managed to burn through all of it so fast that she was now asking to borrow money? I lent it to Tsunade. That gambling addict, you've got some guts. I didn't have a choice. She was crying, saying she had no food, no clothes, that she couldn't survive. And you actually believed her? Oh, come on. Kushina pouted before quickly shifting the topic. That bastard is completely heartless. He claims he has nothing to do with the damage to the standby station and is making me pay for all the repairs. Even the third Hokage is siding with him. Her voice turned whiny as she skipped over the part about lending money to Tsunade, launching into an endless rant about how despicable Danzo was. She even threw in a few complaints about the third Hokage, as if the destruction of the standby station had absolutely nothing to do with her. Just 3 million ryo, right? If you could add a little more so I can afford food, that would be even better. You really need to start managing your expenses better. When you collect rent, set aside an emergency fund. And next time someone asks to borrow money, think about whether they actually need it for something important. With a helpless sigh, got up from the couch, speaking as he retrieved 2 deposit slips from a hidden compartment in his study. Kushina obediently kneeled in front of the coffee table. Maybe it was the alcohol, but as she listened to his nagging, she couldn't help but think of Mundo. Absent-mindedly, she accepted the 2 bank slips, each worth 5 million ryo. Seeing her dazed expression, waved a hand in front of her face and reminded her again. Take the extra money, eat well, buy yourself some nice clothes. And next time something like this happens, don't take it out on yourself. Rather than making yourself suffer, make others suffer instead. Before he could finish, he noticed tears welling up in Kushina's eyes, rolling down her cheeks one after another. Not great at handling emotional situations, He quickly grabbed a tissue from the box and handed it to her. Watching her cry so miserably, he sighed, racking his brain for a way to comfort her. If you're still mad, we could always sneak up on Danzo and give him a good whack. I know how Harut operates pretty well. I'm his Granny Mido. She had only been silently shedding tears at first, but with K's words, she completely lost control. All the grievances, all the loneliness, all the suppressed longing for her loved ones came flooding out in one uncontrollable outburst. She threw her head back and wailed, snot mixing with tears as she cried her heart out. Since Mido's passing, it had been so long since she had heard words of genuine care like this. Because she was the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, she couldn't leave the village freely for missions, nor could she live like a normal kunoichi. Everywhere she went, she felt the eyes of those who feared and despised her. And on top of that, high-ranking officials led by Danzo would target her from time to time. The third Hokage always consoled her afterward, but his words were always the same, telling her to be mature, saying that they were only doing what was best for the village. But if it was really for the village, then why was she always the one who had to endure? Why weren't they the ones making compromises? Want me to go with you to the Senju compound for a visit? Cast tentatively. Kushina shook her head, wiping at her tears as she suddenly looked up. Did you use some kind of jutsu on Danzo? Huh? No, why would you think that? K's heart skipped a beat, but his expression remained perfectly neutral as he played dumb. Liar. You might be able to fool others, but not me. I sensed it, you know. When he left, I felt a flicker of malice from you. She was still covered in tears and snot, but her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled mischievously. Gross. Wipe your face already. Crying and laughing at the same time, you look ridiculous. Twitched slightly at the corner of his eye, gave up on denying it, and simply pressed a tissue against her face. Heek, I'm really glad I met you. Chapter 9, The Clan's Obligations. Kushina's suspicions were confirmed. Realizing that it was Ku who had vented her frustration on her behalf, she slowly calmed down and wiped away her tears. Hugging her knees, she sat contentedly in the corner of the sofa. Maybe it was the alcohol, or perhaps the emotional ups and downs had drained her. As the peace settled in, drowsiness crept over her. I'll heat up some water for your bath. You can sleep in the guest room afterward. Seeing her nod slightly with her eyes closed, K stood up and headed for the bathroom. By the time he returned, she had already curled up on the sofa, fast asleep. Even in sleep, her brows remained slightly furrowed, and traces of tears clung to her lashes. With a quiet sigh, he gently picked her up, carried her to the guest room, and tucked her in before leaving to wash up. Half submerged in the bathtub, he replayed everything that had happened earlier at the Jonin standby station. After confirming that he hadn't given anything away, he finally felt a little at ease. According to the original story, only 2 people were explicitly stated to have the ability to sense malice, Mido and Naruto, both Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Otherwise, during the Fourth Great Ninja War, the transformation technique of White Zetsu wouldn't have rendered the entire allied shinobi forces helpless. Kushina clearly hadn't reached Mido's level, where she could treat Kurama like a pet fox, nor had she achieved Naruto's perfect Jinchuriki status by fully reconciling with the beast. Her ability to vaguely perceive malice likely stemmed from forcibly suppressing Kurama with adamantine sealing chains and siphoning a large amount of its chakra. On top of that, while she never awakened the mind's eye of the Kagura, her sensory abilities were exceptionally sharp. During her encounter with Danzo, her chakra had been operating at high intensity, and a series of coincidences had aligned. Only then did she fleetingly catch that intense burst of malice when K made his move. I need to be more cautious in the future, he reflected. As far as he knew, no other methods for detecting malice existed in the shinobi world, but who could say what strange abilities might appear? Just like how the original story never mentioned Kushina having such a perception at all. The plot wasn't omniscient, after all. A little extra caution could never hurt. Sinking deeper into the warm bath, he retrieved the notes he had scribbled when he first arrived in this world. Cross-referencing them with the memories that had resurfaced after 2 overlapping traits merged, he carefully sorted out any useful information. It wasn't until the moon hung high in the sky that exhaustion took over, and he finally went to bed. The night passed in silence. By the time he woke up the next morning, Kushina had already left. The neatly folded bedding caught his eye, along with a small note pressed under a teacup. I'm not messy at all, okay? Also, you've gotten quite bold, huh? Sneaking a hug like that, a playful doodle of a smiling face and a big heart accompanied the words, bringing a smile to his face. As she had pointed out, he really had become bolder since activating the system. The old him would never have let a Nine-Tails Jinchuriki spend a night. Let alone talk about ambushing Danzo. After years of living in Hidden Leaf Village, he knew exactly how to avoid catching the attention of the schemers lurking in the shadows. If he had been a little bolder back then. He'd have dragged me off for a warning ages ago. Scoffed. He knew exactly what his identity meant and what Kushina represented to Hidden Leaf Village. If he hadn't deliberately maintained a careful distance between them, Danzo would have come knocking long ago. But now, he wanted to hold that red-haired girl in his arms and have a sweet, carefree romance. If Danzo, Koharu, or Hamura dared to interfere, well, perfect timing. In his past life, he had been fascinated by extreme thrills and dangerous stunts, and in this life, he had even learned a technique that allowed him to control others' bodies. Wingsuit flying over the Valley of Death in the Land of Bears, extreme snowboarding down the snow peak of the Land of Snow, surfing monstrous waves in the Land of the Sea's typhoons. If those places were too far, there was always bungee jumping off the Hokage rock. After all, it wouldn't be him facing the consequences. Why not go all out? Why am I actually looking forward to them making a move? He grinned and stepped out the door, heading for the mission assignment office. A quick stop in the shopping district for a couple of dango skewers and rice balls was enough to appease his rebellious stomach. He wondered if it was time for his clan to open a few breakfast shops in Hidden Leaf Village, bringing in some extra income for the elderly while giving the villagers a taste of something new. He couldn't say much, but with his memories from the trait fusion, he could perfectly recreate soybean milk, cheese Danish, panna cotta, meat pies, focaccia bread, and lamb soup. Arriving at the mission office, he handed over the signed confirmation from the client of yesterday's mission to the duty jonin, Shikaku, and collected his payment. Just as he was about to browse for another low-level mission, Shikaku called him over to an office on the side of the hall. "How's it going as a squad leader? If I say I don't like it, can I quit?" "Nope. Just making conversation. Pretend you didn't hear that. Then get to the point." They exchanged matching eye rolls. The Inoshikacho clans had always been close, and being only a year apart in age, they had grown up together. There was no need for empty formalities between them. "The 3 members in your squad were personally chosen by the Hokage, especially Kurenai. It would be best if you take her in as a disciple and guide her well." "Kurenai's father, right?" "Yeah. The situation in the shinobi world isn't exactly stable right now, and since our clans support the Hokage's faction." "Got it. I'll train them properly." Waved a hand dismissively, unimpressed. He had already suspected Hiruzen's intentions when he first saw his squad's composition. Guy and Genma both came from clean backgrounds and were the kind of people willing to sacrifice for their teammates. Their skill sets complemented each other, and they'd get along without issue. As for himself, being a member of the Yamanaka clan, he was naturally aligned with the Hokage faction. He was also skilled in Ganjutsu and his clan's yin release techniques, making him the perfect choice to mentor Kurenai. Hiruzen's plan was obvious. By fostering Kurenai, he could secure Shinku's loyalty and quickly win over lower-ranking ninjas, preparing for the turmoil ahead. As for Ebisu, who had been transferred to the logistics training department, he was just another pawn being moved under the pretense of best utilizing his skills. Wasn't particularly fond of these political maneuvers, but since he benefited from his clan's influence, there were some things he simply couldn't avoid. The best he could do was treat his squad fairly and train them to the best of his ability. Chapter 10, Danzo's worst day ever. Shikaku had no doubts about K's political wisdom. After a brief exchange, he pulled out a D-rank mission scroll that had been prepared in advance. Cleaning up trash from a riverbed. Glanced at the mission details on the scroll, thought for a moment, and didn't refuse. Compared to D-rank missions like hunting wild boars or driving away beasts, cleaning a riverbed was time-consuming and physically demanding, but the corresponding reward was noticeably higher. Besides, he still needed some time to organize the useful information in his mind, maximizing the advantage of his knowledge of the storyline. A task where the subordinates did the work while he could slack off was the perfect choice. Leaving the mission assignment office, he headed to the meeting spot agreed upon with his 3 teammates the day before. After distributing the previous mission's rewards, he led the 3, who were all beaming with excitement, straight to the downstream riverbed of the Naka River to carry out the task. Hidden Leaf Village's assigned mission system wasn't exactly favorable to ordinary ninjas. To participate in the Chunin exams, a genin needed not only a Jonin's recommendation but also a mere 8 mission experiences. This alone revealed a lot. Most genin actually had very few missions. One reason was that the number of available missions wasn't enough to sustain Hidden Leaf Village's vast number of ninjas, but the bigger issue lay in the imbalance of resource distribution. The third Hokage, in order to strengthen his rule and authority, tightly controlled the review, distribution, and assignment of missions. He claimed it was to ensure that ninjas of different abilities received missions suited to their level, increasing success rates and reducing casualties. Those aligned with the Hokage naturally received high-quality missions with frequent assignments, while those at odds with his faction were lucky if they got no missions at all. Being assigned a few high-difficulty, life-threatening tasks was a real possibility. As for long-time genin who couldn't get promoted or those who had little presence in the village, it wasn't uncommon for them to go an entire month without a single mission, making it hard to sustain their livelihood. Someone like, who could pick up a mission whenever he wanted and even had some autonomy in choosing them, was enjoying privileges reserved for the elite of the Hokage's inner circle. Kurenai, having spent most of her career in support teams, didn't have much of an opinion on this. However, Guy and Genma had personally experienced the struggle of having no missions to take. So while Kurenai was frowning at the sight of the river surface filled with garbage, Guy and Genma had already rolled up their sleeves, ready to get to work. Before we start, here's a little gift for you all. Quickly formed hand seals, then struck each of them precisely in the abdomen with his palm. Forelimbs waiting seal. A swirling black curse mark emerged on their stomachs, extending sealing chains toward their limbs. An invisible pressure swept through their bodies. Guy, with the strongest physique, staggered and barely managed to support himself with his hands on his knees. Genma and Kurenai, on the other hand, simply collapsed onto the ground. This technique applies weighted pressure to the body. To counteract it, you'll have to exert both physical strength and chakra in perfect sync. Once you fully adapt, your physical endurance, mental strength, and chakra reserves will all improve significantly. So, do your best. A mischievous grin appeared on K's face as he explained his so-called gift, a new type of weight training. My youthful flames are burning brighter than ever. Woo! Guy, feeling the immense pressure coursing through his limbs, showed no frustration at all. If anything, he looked more energized than ever. Letting out a spirited battle cry, he immediately started throwing punches and kicks, trying to adapt to the seal. Genma glanced at his hyperactive teammate, sighed, and wordlessly forced himself up from the ground, slowly moving his arms and legs to adjust. Who gives gifts like this? Kurenai, who had nearly face-planted into the dirt, mentally cursed her team leader's twisted sense of humor. She had been just a fraction of a second away, just a tiny bit. If her reflexes had been any slower, she would have taken a full bite of that rotten soil mixed with who knows how much garbage. The cleaning tools are in that wooden hut over there. Well then, let's begin the mission. A friendly reminder, walking on water with a seal in place requires even greater chakra control. Seeing that the three had gradually adapted to the seal, announced the start of the mission. Then, using the body flicker jutsu, he swiftly leaped onto a large tree in a breezy spot, half reclining on the trunk as he continued organizing the details of the storyline. Due to the terrain, this part of the riverbed had accumulated a massive amount of household waste. Based on the average speed of a genin, cleaning up this area would take at least 5 days. Adding in the forelimbs waiting seal slowing down his 3 teammates, it was unlikely to be finished in less than a week. Plop. Plop. Just as he grabbed a scroll and pen, the sound of 2 people falling into the water reached his ears. Looking down, he saw Guy and Genma climbing out of the filthy water, dripping wet and disheveled. Smirking, contentedly returned to his own work. Deep within the root headquarters, Danzo sat inside an iron-walled chamber, his expression dark and brooding. A full metal samurai helmet covered his head, with thick bandages wrapped around his forehead. In front of him, several root operatives stood stiffly, awaiting his response. Since early yesterday, his head had mysteriously suffered 3 separate attacks, a broken beam in the waiting area, a collapsing ceiling in the medical wing, and a falling stone brick in his office. If not for his years of battlefield experience and sharp reflexes, his name might have already been added to the memorial stone. Danzo-sama, Orochimaru has responded. He found no anomalies in your body. If these incidents weren't just coincidences, then it must be some kind of unknown secret technique. The root operative cautiously relayed Orochimaru's analysis. Danzo's already grim face darkened further, veins bulging slightly in frustration. That explanation was as good as useless. After a moment of silence, he continued. Have you investigated the Jinchuriki's movements from yesterday to this morning? Here is the report for your review. Another root member stepped forward and handed over a meticulously compiled surveillance record. Danzo unfurled the scroll, scanning its contents as he carefully considered his next move. Yesterday, he had deliberately provoked the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki by demanding the Uzumaki clan's secret techniques. His true intention, however, was to gauge the attitudes of various ninja clans toward Root. The Inuzuka, Aburame, and Hyuga clans, whether they saw through his motives or not, had wisely chosen to stay out of it. But the Akimaki, Nara, Yamanaka, and Kurama clans stayed overnight, left the next morning carrying a large sum of money. Why set up an anti-sensing barrier? Could it be, thud? Just as countless thoughts raced through his mind, a pigeon egg-sized rock slipped through the gaps of the iron chamber's defenses and struck his metal helmet. A sharp, stabbing pain shot through his already aching head. The root operatives kneeling before him immediately lowered their heads, not daring to breathe too loudly. Whatever patience Danzō had left was completely shattered by that single stone. Investigate. List everyone I came into contact with yesterday. I want them checked, one by one. Find out exactly who is behind this. Yes. Chapter 11, Will of Fire or Pilove. Had no idea about the chaos within Root or Danzō's fury. After spending the entire day sorting through the information in his mind, he noticed the sun beginning to set. Kurenai, Guy, and Genma, along with the others, had finally managed to maintain their water-walking stance under the seal's restrictions. Calling out to them, he led the group back to Hidden Leaf Village. Once again, he treated them to dinner and reminded them to bring bento for tomorrow before dismissing them. Watching the exhausted group drag their heavy bodies home, he formed a hand seal and discreetly activated the Yamanaka clan's sensory jutsu, connecting to the barrier that enveloped the entire village. He silently praised the foresight of his clan's ancestors for leaving a hidden backdoor when they established the village's sensory barrier. By distinguishing chakra signatures, he quickly located Kushina's position before quietly severing the connection. Stopping by a dango shop in the shopping district, he bought a bag of Hidden Leaf Village's specialty dangos, before leisurely heading toward the Jonin standby station. The area where the old standby station once stood had changed. The ruins from yesterday had been cleared, and after salvaging any usable materials and documents, the ground had been leveled and reinforced using earth style. Over 20 workers and a few geinin were now diligently transporting construction materials under the guidance of master craftsmen. Kushina stood nearby, wearing a plain white safety helmet, holding a few architectural blueprints in her hands as she supervised with great enthusiasm. Noticing approaching with snacks, she ran over, grinning mischievously like a fox that had just stolen a treat. Holding up her dirt-streaked hands, she opened her mouth wide, motioning for him to feed her. "Ah! What are you looking at on those blueprints?" Chuckled, picking a dango and popping it into her mouth. Kushina's eyes narrowed with joy as she chewed on the soft, salty sweet dango. With a proud expression, she spread out the blueprints for him to see. "Take a look, I designed this." "What do you think?" "You designed it?" "Who drew it?" "I explained it, and someone else drew it for me." "Did the Hokage approve this?" "I paid for it." "Why would he say no?" "That makes sense." Examine the structure on the blueprint. It showed a building shaped like an ice cream cone, with 9 spiraling walls converging at a single point. He tried to imagine what the third Hokage must have been thinking when he approved this design. The bright red color scheme matched the Hokage building, so at first glance, it didn't seem too outrageous. But something about it felt off. If the paint started to fade, wouldn't this thing look like a giant pile of? Maybe, just maybe. The Hokage thought it resembled a flame, symbolizing the will of fire. The will of fire. Shaped like a? Now that he thought about it, it really did look like shit, and it was not the sweet emoji kind. It was just shit. Pure shit. What do you think? Kushina's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Faced with such an expectant expression, there was no way he would say anything to ruin the mood. The symbolism is great. From the front, it probably resembles the Uzumaki clan emblem, right? 9 spirals, representing both your name and your identity as the 9 tails Jinchuriki. That's a clever concept. Though I bet it is cursing up a storm inside the seal right now. K pointed out some key aspects of her design. Heek, you really understand me best. Kushina nodded repeatedly, spreading the blueprint wide under the setting sun. She wanted to leave her mark on Hidden Leaf Village. Whether others saw it as good or bad, liked it or feared it, it didn't matter. She was who she was, Uzumaki Kushina, the second Jinchuriki of the 9 tails after Uzumaki Mido. Watching her, eyes shining like stars, her laughter blending with the evening glow, radiating energy as if she were glowing herself, made a mental note to talk to the logistics department later about increasing the maintenance budget for the Jonin standby station. They absolutely could not let the paint fade. He was afraid the sight of it would be too much of a blow for her to handle. A sudden whoosh cut through the air. The sound of the body flicker jutsu. A masked ninja clad in the standard Danbu combat uniform appeared less than 2 meters from K's side. That kind of proximity was a clear sign of hostility to a ninja, making him furrow his brows slightly. The Anbu were a special force directly commanded by the Hokage, chosen through rigorous selection, their loyalty to the village and its leader unquestionable. Because of that, their attitude during missions often reflected the Hokage's stance. Yet, never before had an Anbu approached him with such an overtly threatening presence. The Hokage orders you to report to his office immediately. You have an important mission. Understood. Nodded, handing the bag of snacks to Kushina. I'll be heading to the Hokage now. Be careful. Kushina accepted the bag, though her expression stiffened slightly. She had waited for years, and finally, she was starting to get a response to her feelings. She had just been thinking about consulting Mikoto for some romance tips, then that old man had to interfere again. Did the third Hokage have some sort of grudge against Jinchuriki finding love? Damn it. She was going to tell Tsunade. She'd have her smash up the Hokage's office. Don't worry. Oh, and my new genin, I'm leaving them in your hands. Noticed her mood souring and quickly decided to throw the kid her way as a distraction. On one side, a powerful jonin who could distress by training or tormenting someone. On the other, genin desperate to improve and willing to endure any hardship. A perfect match. No problem, Data Bane. Kushina nodded firmly, clearly pleased with his trust. Smiled, waved, then turned and sped off toward the Hokage's office. Only when he started moving did the Anbu messenger follow closely behind, close enough that it felt less like an escort and more like surveillance, confirming the uneasy suspicion he had moments ago. Was the old man getting more paranoid with age? That didn't seem right. Kushina had just stayed over at his place for one night. And they had slept in separate rooms. They hadn't even done anything, so why such an overreaction? Wait. Last night, to prevent his clan members from eavesdropping with sensory jutsu, he had kept an anti-sensory barrier up the whole time. Shit. Did the third Hokage think he and Kushina had already reached that stage in their relationship? Froze for a split second. Now that he realized what was going on, he wasn't sure whether to blame himself for being careless or curse the old man for overreacting. Chapter 12, R.I.P. Crow Danzo. His head was wrapped like a mummy, leaving only his eyes and mouth exposed. Wearing a hospital gown yet donning a samurai helmet, he radiated such intense resentment that it almost felt tangible. It had to be Danzo. His eyes showed a flicker of surprise, momentarily doubting whether he had recognized the right person. He never expected that in just one day, Danzo would be reduced to such a miserable state by the Black Drake. But as he noticed the Anbu ninja who had been monitoring him the entire way now standing behind Danzo, he couldn't help but feel that big brainstorm effect still wasn't strong enough. Why didn't the beam from the waiting room collapse and crush him to death? That guy from earlier was actually a root ninja. Danzo-sama just delivered intelligence. There have been frequent skirmishes between Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Mist Village in the southern region of the Land of Tea. The casualties on both sides are rising, and it appears the conflict may escalate. To obtain accurate information, I need you to go there. Hiruzen, with a pipe in his mouth, casually tossed a scroll toward. A solo mission? Glancing at Danzo, who was seated on the sofa, then lowered his gaze to examine the scroll. Hiruzen's words were clear. This intelligence came from Danzo, and it was Danzo who suggested be the one to handle it. As Hokage, he had assessed the mission's authenticity and importance, determining that, as a member of the Yamanaka clan and a former member of the analysis team, was the most suitable choice. That's why he was summoned. But Pikura? Scorch-style user Pikura? Seeing the name in the scroll, K's eyes twitched slightly. Pikura was one of the rising stars of Hidden Sand Village in recent years. Her mastery of Scorch style had left many Hidden Mist Village ninjas utterly helpless, earning her a formidable reputation. Even without his knowledge of the original story, any ninja who frequently carried out missions outside the village would have heard of her. If this was a solo mission, he had to wonder if the third Hokage and Danzo were in on this together, planning to get rid of him. After all, ever since joining the analysis team, he had deliberately been keeping a moderate profile, only displaying strength slightly above that of an average jonin with no deep foundation. Facing Pikura head-on? That was practically suicide. She's quite well known, and it's too dangerous for you to go alone. I've arranged a partner for you. As soon as Hiruzen finished speaking, there was a knock on the office door. After receiving permission, Minato opened the door and walked in. The serious expression on his face softened slightly when he saw K standing in the office. Minato, huh? Now that's a reliable teammate. K smiled as well. The doubts and distrust he had toward Hiruzen eased significantly. Minato's strength was unquestionable. Having mastered the Flying Thunder God Jutsu of the second Hokage, his mobility ranked among the best in the entire shinobi world. Forget just Pikura, if they encountered an entire Hidden Sand Village force, the two of them could still retreat without issue. Looks like we'll be fighting side by side again. Minato's expression carried a hint of nostalgia, clearly recalling the missions they had once completed together. The two had grown up side by side, entered the academy together, and graduated as ninjas at the same time. Though they were not assigned to the same team after graduation, before K joined the analysis division, they had completed countless missions together, forming an unshakable bond. If you want to catch up, do it after your mission. Minato, let K brief you on the details. Time is tight. Once you're ready, set out immediately, Hiruzen urged them on. After they accepted the mission and left the Hokage's office, he turned his gaze to Danzo, who had remained silent on the sofa. I told you before, is a child I watched grow up. He has always been careful in his actions. There's no way he was the one who targeted you from the shadows. Even if it wasn't him, his connection with the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is too close. The power of the Nine-Tails should never be influenced or controlled by a ninja clan. Danzo pressed his fingertips against the chakra sensing seal in his palm, his already grim expression darkening further. This seal was a forbidden technique developed by the second Hokage. Its sensitivity surpassed even the most advanced medical instruments available. Just now, it had shown no reaction to K, proving there was no lingering chakra signature linked to him. While this eliminated one suspect and narrowed his search, he had actually hoped K was the culprit. With K's connections to the heads of the Inoshikacho clans and his ambiguous stance regarding the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, he was a highly valuable asset for Root. Hiruzen, unaware of the schemes in Danzo's mind, assumed he was genuinely concerned about the issue of the Jinchuriki. After a moment of contemplation, weighing the pros and cons, and considering the potential consequences of Kushina marrying into the Yamanaka clan, he attempted to reassure his old friend. Danzo, feelings aren't something that can be forced. Just like back then, you and Koharu. Ahem, what I mean is, Kushina was bound to marry someone eventually. Hidden Leaf Village will need a new Jinchuriki in the coming decades. A female Jinchuriki giving birth will significantly weaken the seal's strength. That's too great a risk for the village. The land of whirlpools may be gone, but there are still others with Uzumaki bloodlines in the shinobi world. Kushina is a Hidden Leaf Village kunoichi, not a Root operative. Besides, Lady Mido made it very clear back then, a Jinchuriki developing psychological issues could lead to disastrous consequences. Then you, damn it. Danzo scoffed but, in his agitation, was suddenly struck by a sharp pain in his head. Calm down a little. We can talk things through without you sending yourself to the afterlife. Hiruzen watched as Danzo groaned, nearly incapacitating himself. His rising blood pressure quickly subsided, and he inwardly sighed in relief. Thank goodness he wasn't the one who got targeted. Not to mention the 6 head injuries in a single day, just arguing for a few minutes and the pain was already unbearable. Who could endure such a thing? Bring in the next one. Danzo clutched his helmeted head, taking deep breaths to ease the throbbing pain. His hatred for the one who had targeted him reached its peak at that moment. Even the matter of the Jinchuriki was temporarily pushed aside, all he wanted now was to uncover who had done this to him. Just as he spoke, a faint creaking sound came from somewhere, like the sound of a wooden board cracking. After experiencing so many unexpected incidents, he was already on edge. The moment the sound reached his ears, he sprang from the sofa and used the body flicker jutsu to leap out of the open window. Caw. Arg. A pained and furious scream echoed from outside. Hiruzen looked out to see Danzo clutching his head in agony, having just crashed headfirst into a crow. For a moment, he wasn't sure whether to feel sorry for Danzo or for the unfortunate bird. Chapter 13, Rumor has it, 10 million ryo after Danzo was urgently taken for treatment, the Hokage's office regained its calm. Hiruzen stood by the window, watching the setting sun while refilling his extinguished pipe with fresh tobacco. Smoke began to rise, obscuring his expression. Danzo's words had indeed served as a reminder. The land of whirlpools had already been destroyed. Hidden Leaf Village had lost its most stable source of a Jinchuriki. If something were to happen to Kushina, finding another suitable Jinchuriki quickly would be extremely difficult. The words of Mido still echoed in his ears, suppressing a Jinchuriki's emotional needs too much would only lead to instability, a situation far more harmful than beneficial. The issue of a female Jinchuriki giving birth was a particularly difficult hurdle. The mother dies, child succeeds method of succession carried unpredictable risks. If Hidden Leaf Village had more Uzumaki clan members skilled in sealing techniques, they could assist during a Jinchuriki's childbirth, maximizing the stability of the seal and ensuring that the Nine-Tails remained under control. And if an emergency did occur, Hidden Leaf Village wouldn't be left without a successor. Besides, war, Hiruzen let out a long sigh. The tensions between the ninja villages were growing more intense, and it wouldn't be long before war erupted. The Land of Fire, with its abundant resources, fertile lands, and thriving economy, had always been a primary target for the other villages. Hidden Leaf Village had yet to fully recover from the shadow of the Second Great Ninja War. If the worst were to happen, the power of a Jinchuriki might become indispensable. A normal ninja squad would take about 2 days to travel from Hidden Leaf Village to the southern coastline of the Land of Fire. From there, another 2 days by sea were needed to reach their mission's destination. Given the urgency of this mission's intelligence, Minato, filled with a strong sense of responsibility, unconsciously increased his speed the moment he stepped out of Hidden Leaf Village's gates. Despite knowing the current situation in Hidden Sand Village, understood that they wouldn't stop searching for their missing third Kazekage. But this wasn't something he could explain to Minato, so he could only follow along in silence, focusing on the journey ahead. While maintaining enough stamina to handle potential battles, they traveled at full speed without resting at night, quenching thirst with water, suppressing hunger with soldier pills. By the second night, around 9 o'clock, they arrived at the southern port of the Land of Fire. Boarding a small sailing boat designated for Hidden Leaf Village's ninjas, carefully checked the captain and 2 sailors before setting up various warning seals and traps in their cabin. Meanwhile, Minato summoned 2 small toads from Mount Mayabaku to stand guard through the night. Exhausted, the 2 finally gave in to sleep, recovering their strength as quickly as possible. The waves weren't too rough, and the gentle rocking of the boat was more soothing than uncomfortable, even aiding their sleep. By the time they woke to the cries of seagulls, the sun was already high in the sky. After quickly freshening up, Minato brought over 2 large bowls of seafood rice soup. The freshly caught seafood had been meticulously prepared, free of any fishy smell, instead carrying a faint sweetness. The rice, soaked in broth, was rich with flavor, leaving a lingering taste after every bite. The meal was so delicious that couldn't help but give it high praise. Minato, slightly embarrassed by the compliment, smiled shyly. With their hunger satisfied, the 2 casually sat cross-legged on the deck, enjoying a rare moment of leisure during their mission. "I heard you and Kushina are preparing to get married?" Minato shaded his eyes with one hand, gazing out at the vast, endless ocean. The sudden question left completely baffled. Where did this rumor even come from? He hadn't even started dating anyone, and now, somehow, he was supposedly about to get married? Where did you even hear that? Huh? Yesterday morning, at the standby station, Choza said that Kushina didn't have enough savings, so she used the 10 million ryo you gave her as a wedding gift to compensate the standby station. That's not true? How does he even know I gave Kushina 10 million? Suzaku, the one in charge of the standby station, said the deposit slip had your name on it. That doesn't prove it was a wedding gift. Well, Inoichi said you 2 are already living together, that you stay at the same place every night. Are you guys seriously this gossipy all the time? Suddenly felt that Danzo targeting him wasn't completely unreasonable. What kind of nonsense was spreading inside Hidden Leaf Village? And why did it feel like all the jonin in the village were just a bunch of damn busybodies? Did they do anything other than sit around and gossip all day? Fine, the others were whatever, but Inoichi too? That bastard even dragged him and Kushina into their rumors? Was this even something to gossip about? Didn't they worry at all about how the higher-ups might perceive this? Wait, suddenly thought of Shikaku, that ridiculously smart bastard, and immediately realized what was going on. That guy must have already figured out the mindset of Hidden Leaf Village as upper echelons. That was why he had the Inoshikacho trio intentionally spread these rumors. This was their way of indirectly reassuring Hiruzen that there was nothing suspicious going on. Those guys were silently clearing obstacles for him and Kushina. A bunch of meddlesome fools. Ahaha. Well, in the standby station, there's really not much to do, so people just chat about whatever. Minato laughed awkwardly, scratching his head. You guys have never experienced Kushina's iron fist before, have you? Sighed helplessly. Even if Inoichi and the others had good intentions, if Kushina found out about this, with her outwardly carefree but secretly sensitive personality, being teased like this, well, he just hoped Inoichi and the others wouldn't get beaten up too badly. No, not really. Minato grinned brightly at the topic. His relationship with Kushina was actually quite good. Perhaps because of his naturally kind and gentle nature, Kushina had never once hit him. On the other hand, always teased her and ended up getting chased down and punched. You ever consider the possibility, just saying, a possibility that Kushina thinks if she punches you, you'll cry for a long time? And maybe, just maybe, she'd even have to comfort you afterward? So she holds back? Chapter 14, Minato's 8 traits. After seeing the ocean scenery for so long, it inevitably started to feel dull and monotonous. Minato had been excitedly observing the sea for half a day on the first day. After that, most of their time was spent discussing their newly recruited disciples or exchanging insights on ninjutsu. Occasionally, they would practice techniques, comparing moves and strategies for battle. Minato truly was a bona fide genius. The various traits he possessed were enough to make even someone like, who had a system, green with envy. Spatial insight, purple, ultra-fast reactions, purple, sealing mastery, blue, sharp mind, blue, fortune, blue, chakra storage, blue, wind style mastery, green, handsome, green. A total of 8 traits, 6 of which were innate talents. Spatial insight allowed for a keen perception of spatial fluctuations, making it perfectly compatible with space-time ninjutsu. Ultra-fast reactions, enhanced nerve response speed, physical reaction time, hand seal speed, chakra flow, and jutsu execution. Sharp mind, improved learning ability, tactical thinking, and even ninjutsu development and research. Fortune, increased luck, while chakra storage, boosted chakra reserves and recovery. The only trait where Minato fell slightly behind was handsome. With this, who the hell else but Minato could become the fourth Hokage? Every time he looked at Minato's traits, he couldn't help but feel envious. Forget the rest, even just spatial insight alone was enough to make him crave it. What transmigrator wouldn't want to learn the Flying Thunder God Jutsu? Unfortunately, despite arriving in the Naruto world, he hadn't gained any extraordinary space-time talent. His spatial abilities were barely enough to use summoning jutsu and storage seals, completely incapable of even touching the threshold of the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. If not for the system giving him a sliver of hope, he would have long given up on learning it. 2.5 days passed in endless discussions and sparring between the two. The sea remained calm during this time, allowing them to reach the southern port town of the Land of Tea half a day ahead of schedule. The sun was high in the sky when their ship docked. Taking precautions, they removed their hidden leaf village forehead protectors and used the transformation jutsu to disguise themselves as ordinary carpenters before preparing to enter the town and gather intelligence. 4 ninjas with hidden mist village forehead protectors emerged from within the town. Leading them was a towering figure with waist-length orange hair, meticulously groomed, standing at an imposing 2.5 meters tall. With the massive Saimata strapped to his back, who else could he be but Suikazen Fuki, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. The 3 behind him were unfamiliar, but judging by their attire, they were likely hidden mist village Anbu elites, at the very least of Jonin level strength. As the 4 hidden mist village ninjas approached, and Minato instinctively exchanged a glance and put on fearful expressions, stepping aside with panicked faces like any ordinary civilian would. The hidden mist village ninja didn't seem to notice anything amiss and walked past without hesitation. Watching them leap into the distance, and Minato didn't immediately give chase. Instead, they entered the town first. Under the influence of the second Mizukage, Hidden Mist Village had long upheld secrecy in its operations. Even after the third Mizukage took power, this philosophy remained unchanged. Hidden Mist Village ninjas would never openly stroll through a town in such a blatant manner. Something was clearly off. Sure enough, just as and Minato stepped into town, more than 10 civilians, men, women, old, and young, began emerging from the alleyways. A frail old woman, appearing to be in her 70s with silver-white hair, gave a few instructions to her subordinates before waving her hand. The group immediately scattered like arrows released from a bow, swiftly moving along the north and south sides in pursuit of the Hidden Mist Village ninja. Meanwhile, the old woman herself followed directly in the same direction the Hidden Mist Village ninjas had gone. Ken Minato exchanged glances. It was obvious, this was a silent confrontation between Hidden Mist Village and Hidden Sand Village. With no way of knowing whether either side had additional reinforcements, the two disguised as carpenters quickly feigned fear and slipped further into the town. After making several turns, they found a secluded alleyway where no one would notice them. Formed a hand seal, activating the Yamanaka clan's secret perception jutsu to its fullest extent. In an instant, chakra signatures within a 10-kilometer radius flooded his mind. There are quite a lot of them, he muttered before quickly shifting his hand seals again. Using the mind transmission jutsu, he relayed the information directly to Minato. The frequent clashes had clearly ignited tensions between Hidden Sand Village and Kiri. With over 30 chakra signatures detected, this was far beyond the scale of a typical border skirmish. On Kiri's side, the 4-man team led by Fuki was evidently just bait. Hidden in the forests a few kilometers away, 16 more ninjas lay in ambush. Meanwhile, Hidden Sand Village had 1 person charging directly into the encirclement while 12 others flanked from the north and south, seemingly attempting a counter-ambush. Within the town itself, 4 more chakra signatures lingered. Whether they were Hidden Sand Village scouts or Hidden Mist Village reinforcements remained unclear. This scale of conflict. Minato frowned as he analyzed the shared perception. Nearly 40 ninjas engaged in direct combat wasn't just a personal grudge between ninja. A mobilization of this size had to be sanctioned by the higher-ups, which often meant the conflict between these villages had reached an irreconcilable point. Worrying won't change anything. Let's focus on our own mission. Wasn't particularly concerned about the clash between Hidden Sand Village and Kiri. Knowing that war was inevitable, his priority was figuring out how to complete their task, and whether to mix in a little personal touch to subtly influence the course of the Third Great Ninja War. Understood. We'll go with tactical plan 2 and wait for the right moment to enter the battlefield. Minato nodded, setting aside his concerns about the larger war and refocusing on their mission. While still on the ship, they had devised several tactical approaches based on their abilities. Given the current situation, the second plan, allowing them to insert into the battle at any time while maintaining the flexibility to retreat instantly, was the most suitable. Alright. reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a small cylinder engraved with intricate sealing patterns. Unscrewing the lid, he dipped his finger into the preserved blood inside before forming a series of hand seals and activating the summoning jutsu. Unlike those hardened ninjas who would unhesitatingly bite their fingers or slice their palms with kunai, he still wasn't used to casually injuring himself even after more than a decade in this world. Poof! 3 black feathered crows emerged from the chakra smoke, flapping their wings as they cawed noisily. With a quick shift in his hand seals, activated the mind clone switch jutsu. While still maintaining control over his own body, he simultaneously took over the 3 crows' consciousness. The once restless birds immediately fell silent, standing still in place. Minato stepped forward, closing his eyes for a moment before pressing a hand gently against the belly of one crow, engraving the Flying Thunder God mark onto it. Though he hadn't yet reached the level of his future battle against Obito, where he could mark an enemy in the midst of combat, his teleportation speed between pre-marked seals had already been honed to perfection. With the marks in place, the 3 crows took flight under X's control, soaring towards the Hidden Mist Village ambush site. Before he could even get a proper view of the battlefield through their eyes, the moment the old woman clashed with the Hidden Mist Village encirclement, the Hidden Mist Village side had already suffered casualties. Chapter 15, The Thief of Saimata. Less than 5 kilometers from the town, deep in the dense forest, Bakura dispelled her transformation jutsu. She gripped a kunai in each hand, crouching with bent knees, her expression filled with killing intent as she stared down over a dozen Hidden Mist Village ninjas. 2 fireballs from her extremely steaming murder floated at her sides, their searing heat rendering the Hidden Mist Village ninjas hiding in mist jutsu nearly ineffective. At her feet lay a Hidden Mist Village ninja, his body shriveled like a dried corpse, completely devoid of life. There was no exchange of words, no taunts. Fuki let out a sinister laugh and signaled his subordinates. The plan hadn't gone perfectly, not all of Hidden Sand Village's forces had been lured out as intended. There was even a high possibility that some of them were hidden in the shadows, waiting to counterattack. But as the core of Hidden Sand Village's squad, Bakura was their linchpin. If they could take her down quickly, the remaining Hidden Sand Village ninjas would be nothing more than a scattered, broken force. Water style, linked exploding water colliding wave. Under Fuki's command, 15 Hidden Mist Village ninjas unleashed the exploding water colliding wave simultaneously. Torrents of water erupted from their mouths, merging into an overwhelming wave capable of swallowing everything in its path. Bakura's eyes flickered as she leaped swiftly, maneuvering to evade the crashing waves surging in from all directions. Before she could shift the battlefield and break the Hidden Mist Village encirclement, the elite Hidden Mist Village ninjas behind Fuki had already completed their hand seals. Chakra smoke shrouded the area, and within the haze, massive creatures loomed, their presence pressing down on Bakura. The moment the smoke began to dissipate, the summoned beasts and their summoners launched a coordinated attack. Massive water spheres, over 2 meters in diameter and packed with dense chakra, rained down like cannonballs, bombarding Bakura from every angle. Meanwhile, the 15 Hidden Mist Village ninjas who had launched the collaborative water style continued their assault. 8 of them stood in a formation, hands forming seals as they maintained their chakra output, preventing the summoned water from dispersing. The remaining 7 dove into the water, using it as cover to launch a surprise attack from below. The relentless water attacks overwhelmed Bakura, rapidly extinguishing the scorching fireballs spinning at her sides. From beneath the water, the 7 Hidden Mist Village ninjas surged upward, striking in rapid succession. Ha. Let's see where you run this time. Fuki unsheathed his massive sword, Saimata, watching with sadistic delight as Bakura, her body already marred with fresh wounds, struggled to defend herself, barely able to do anything beyond dodging. The thrill of imminent victory surged through him. With a burst of speed, he charged forward, gripping Saimata tightly, riding the waves straight toward Bakura. As Fuki closed in, she kicked away 2 Hidden Mist Village ninjas lunging at her from below, swiftly forming seals before slamming her hands onto the water's surface. Heat erupted from her palms, spreading rapidly. In mere moments, the surging water beneath her transformed into a boiling inferno. The Hidden Mist Village ninjas lurking beneath the water hastily tried to retreat, but 2 of them were a fraction too slow. Scalding steam engulfed them, their agonized screams piercing the air as their skin blistered and burned. Even the massive summoned beasts weren't spared. 1, unable to dodge in time, vanished in a puff of chakra smoke, while the remaining 2 were forced to retreat. Using such a large-scale attack. How much chakra do you even have left? Fuki's grin grew even more twisted. He leaped over the boiling water, bringing Saimata down in a vicious arc toward Bakura. Scorch style, extremely steaming murder. Bakura's hands moved in a blur, forming seals as she unleashed her signature technique. Twin fireballs shot forth, colliding with Saimata. A shriek of pain erupted from the sentient sword. Saimata's gray-blue scales turned red-hot, its body writhing and its spiked surface standing on end. "Don't worry, soon you'll taste the most delicious chakra yet." Fuki soothed Saimata with a few words, showing no concern for the burns on his arm as he continued his relentless assault. Clang! 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 With his immense strength, it took only a few strikes to knock the kunai from Pakura's hands. Her arms, already battered from the close quarters clash with Saimata's serrated scales, were now torn and bleeding. Worse still, her chakra was being steadily drained away. Facing Fuki's overpowering attacks while being entangled by several other hidden Mist Village ninjas, she knew she couldn't hold out in a direct confrontation. Silently, she prayed that her teammates would arrive soon. A sudden cry echoed through the battlefield. "Move, now!" Just as Fuki was pressing his attack, shouts of alarm erupted among the hidden Mist Village ninjas. The 8 hidden Mist Village ninja who had been maintaining the water jutsu's containment field were suddenly ambushed. Though they had been prepared, one of them was instantly decapitated, while the remaining 7 managed to evade fatal wounds, suffering only minor injuries. But the controlled water jutsu, no longer sustained by chakra, quickly dispersed, flooding outward and washing away the advantageous battlefield conditions that had taken so much effort to create. As Fuki momentarily lost focus, Pakura seized the opportunity, sending a fireball straight at Saimata. The living blade shrieked in pain, its surface sizzling under the intense heat. The scorching temperature transferred through the hilt, forcing Fuki to release his grip, even if only for a moment. 12 hidden Sand Village ninjas clashed with the remaining hidden Mist Village ninja in close quarters combat, breaking the encirclement. A brutal melee ensued. Now free from her entrapment, Pakura's killing intent surged. Facing Fuki without his sword, she immediately shifted from defense to offense. Meanwhile, within the town, Ken and Minato had been waiting for their moment. Through sensory ninjutsu and a murder of crows circling above to provide a clear aerial view, they had been watching in silence, awaiting the perfect opportunity. As the hidden Sand Village ninjas deliberately maneuvered the battlefield, drawing the hidden Mist Village forces away from the water-covered forest, a few heavily injured hidden Mist Village ninjas and one nearly incapacitated hidden Sand Village ninja were left behind. Noticing this opening, Ken and Minato moved immediately. A formation of 3 crows, each carrying a flying thunder god mark, dove down from the sky under K's command. One headed directly for the fallen hidden Sand Village ninjas, another aimed at the injured hidden Mist Village ninja, and the last streaked toward the spot where Saimata had fallen. Minato. The sword, Saimata. Saimata, one of the 7 ninja swords of the mist, and by far the most unique. Unlike ordinary weapons, it was alive, capable of absorbing an opponent's chakra and transferring the stolen energy to its wielder. It could even use its stored chakra to enhance cellular regeneration. In extreme cases, it allowed its user to fuse with it, transforming into a fish-like humanoid perfectly suited for aquatic combat. Although in the original timeline, Saimata eventually betrayed its owner, Kisame, and defected to Killer Bee, there was no denying how useful the weapon was under normal circumstances. "You really are." Minato, seeing the childlike gleam in his friend's eyes, found himself unable to refuse. With a helpless smile, he vanished in a flash, activating the Flying Thunder God. Chapter 16, Fate duplicated the ever-widening distance and the intense, deadlocked battle left both Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Mist Village ninjas with no time to care for their wounded comrades left behind. 3 crows suddenly shot down from the sky. A Hidden Mist Village ninja, hastily tending to his own wounds, looked up abruptly. Before he could draw his kunai and strike down the incoming crows, his gaze met theirs. In that instant, his mind was seized by his consciousness slipped, and he stood frozen in place. A flicker of golden light. Minato appeared, his kunai slashing clean across the ninja's throat. He was already upon the next target, positioned precisely by another crow. Squelch! By the time the first Hidden Mist Village ninja's blood finally spurted from his neck, staining the air, Minato had already ended a second life. The sensation of pain and suffocation rushed to his fading consciousness. His vision dimmed. The 3 crows weaved like phantoms through the dense forest, pinpointing the perfect landing spots for Minato's Flying Thunder God Jutsu. A golden flash, living up to the name. The 6 enemies left behind on the battlefield didn't last 10 seconds. Thud. 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 Deep in a town alley, a severed Hidden Mist Village ninja's head landed at K's feet, tossed there by Minato. Minato himself reappeared in the alley, carrying an unconscious, gravely injured Hidden Sand Village ninja over one shoulder, another unconscious Hidden Mist Village ninja in his right hand, and the massive Saimata in his left. With a casual flick of his wrist, the still warm Saimata landed in K's hands. "Minato, you're a beast." Grinned, praising his reliable comrade. He toyed with the struggling, badly burned Saimata, which writhed weakly with its mouth open and tongue lolling out, before sealing it away into a scroll from his chest pouch. The severed Hidden Mist Village ninja's head? That went into a sealing scroll as well. Have your summon find a good hiding place. Should we move out first? Minato, still holding both unconscious captives, sought K's opinion. Their boat had left the port the moment it dropped them off. Extracting intel from these ninjas would require a safe, hidden location. We don't know the terrain as well as Hidden Mist Village and Hidden Sand Village. Instead of running blind, why not hide right under their noses? Formed a hand seal, instantly dismissing his summoned crows. Miles away, the three birds vanished, reappearing in Hidden Leaf Village's avian summoning beast shelter. With precise hand movements, performed the signature jutsu of the Yamanaka clan. His mind clone switch jutsu took hold of the two unconscious captives, overriding their control. Through their bodies, he used a transformation jutsu, turning them into alluring, dolled-up women. With a sultry pose, he even struck a flirtatious look at Minato. Then, without hesitation, he transformed himself into a greasy middle-aged man. You. Minato opened his mouth several times but gave up with a sigh, resigning himself to mimic K's disguise, a sleazy, middle-aged man. After masking all traces of blood and any sense that could be tracked, they each carried a charming lady in their arms. Swaggering into the town's most luxurious inn. Inside the largest suite, Minato set up a simple soundproof barrier while got straight to work. His eye-mind reading activated, diving into the captive's memories. It was a technique mandatory for Hidden Leaf Village's intelligence division. Due to its high mental strain, even in Hidden Leaf Village, only a handful of people could master it. Among them, Inoichi's exceptional yin release mastery allowed him to extract a day's worth of memories in under 60 seconds. But only a few knew the truth. Could do it in under 30 seconds for an elite Jonin. After he gained memory master of the shinobi world, his speed had more than doubled. For the next 5.5 hours until dusk, he absorbed every memory from both captives, meticulously extracting key intelligence and recording it all in a scroll. S-rank mission completed. Detail: obtain Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Mist Village War Intelligence. Reward: 1 trait extraction, 1 trait duplication. Just as he finished organizing the scroll, the system notification in his mind left him momentarily stunned. What did he just hear? Trait duplication? Duplication. Almost instinctively, he turned toward Minato, who stood by the window. Spatial insight. The Flying Thunder God Jutsu, a jutsu he had long coveted, was now within reach. Without hesitation, he immediately used his duplication reward on Minato. Trait duplication successful, obtained, Spatial insight, purple, host, Yamanaka, career, ninja, active traits, transmigrator, red, yin release mastery, purple, Spatial insight, purple, shout and it comes, purple, handsome, blue, memory master of the shinobi world, blue, inactive traits, stealthy crawler, white, fragile yet tenacious, white, trait extraction, 1, trait gifting, 1, a strange, indescribable sensation washed over him. The space around him seemed to shift within his perception. Before, space had always been intangible, impossible to grasp, elusive like a fleeting illusion. He could never truly sense it. But now, with a new trait, the intricate pathways of space were unfolding before his eyes. The hidden nodes of spatial coordinates, once undetectable, were now fully exposed. Even the faintest spatial fluctuations could no longer escape his awareness. The coordinates of the Flying Thunder God, which had eluded him countless times before, were now crystal clear. Constructing the Flying Thunder God mark and establishing spatial markers suddenly felt effortless. If he wanted, he could carve his own Flying Thunder God marks just as easily as Minato. More than that, he could even sense the Flying Thunder God kunai within Minato's ninja pouch. These kunai, which bore Minato's personal spatial markers, resonated perfectly with his chakra. Realized something intriguing: he could potentially use those coordinates to teleport as well. However, due to the fundamental differences in their chakra nature, his movement speed and fluidity would likely be far inferior to Minato's. A personal spatial coordinate, huh? It all made sense. Every ninja's chakra carried unique characteristics. Even when using the same jutsu, individual differences led to subtle variations in effect. But when it came to a technique as precise and demanding as the Flying Thunder God, these differences would be magnified exponentially. Looks like I need to develop my own spatial markers. Chapter 17, The White Trait's cruel joke marked the coordinates of his exclusive space. Feeling pleased, he once again examined his personal panel. Spatial insight. Once he fully mastered the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, he would be unstoppable. We would be able to attack and retreat at will, engage in combat, escape, support allies, or break through enemy lines. His survival ability would skyrocket. Why worry about the Third Great Ninja War now? If I could get another chance to copy an ability, duplicating, ultra-fast reactions, would be even better, he muttered to himself, feeling unsatisfied. Noticing he still had one more chance to extract a trait, he casually clicked to draw. Obtained. Why are you guy? White. Why are you guy? White. Upon acquiring this trait, interest in decreases over time, while attention toward male peers continuously increases. The effect strengthens the longer one interacts with, ultimately leading to a strong attraction. This damn system. When it came to being disappointing, it never failed to deliver. K's mouth twitched. One moment, he was fantasizing about ultra-fast reactions, and the next. This. Sure, he knew white tier traits had the highest probability of appearing. But this wasn't just a matter of bad luck, it was downright cruel. Did you overuse your chakra? Hearing Minato's concerned voice, he looked up, surprised to see his friend observing him with a worried expression, so he quickly walked over from the window. I'm fine. I need you to have the toads deliver this intelligence scroll. Taking a deep breath, handed Minato a scroll filled with valuable information, though it contained some personal additions. It was still accurate intelligence, just framed with a different emphasis. Alright. Rest a bit. Don't push yourself too hard, Minato reminded him as he took the scroll. Then, he pulled out a small tube identical to K's. He dipped his finger in fresh blood and activated the summoning jutsu. There was no other choice. Ever since he saw Q using this method, he had realized how foolish it was to keep injuring his own finger for summoning. After suffering through it several times, he asked Kushina to make him a blood storage tube inscribed with sealing formulas. The seals kept the blood fresh for an extended period. As long as it wasn't opened frequently, it could be stored for a year without any issues. Poof! As the summoning smoke cleared, a red-colored toad wearing goggles appeared in the room. It wasn't too large, one of the communication toads. Yo Minato, good evening. Jiraiya just dropped by Mount Myabaku as a guest. Fukasaku and Shima made a big feast, wanna come? The toad, Kazuki, greeted Minato cheerfully with a raised palm. Where did Jiraiya-sensei get reverse summon from? Minato paused, quickly asking for details. From Hidden Leaf Village. He went back yesterday but didn't see you, said it was a pity. Kazuki mimicked Jiraiya's expression and tone with exaggerated gestures. In that case, please deliver this scroll directly to Jiraiya-sensei. Let him know. A gentle smile appeared on Minato's face. Normally, the toads of Mount Myabaku used a special portal called Distant Body Water to deliver messages to Hidden Leaf Village. This mystical liquid allowed small toads to travel swiftly through underground water veins, making it an essential part of Mount Myabaku's information network. With it, the toads could transmit messages far faster than messenger hawks, delivering intelligence to Hidden Leaf Village in under an hour. But if Jiraiya had been reverse summoned from Hidden Leaf Village to Mount Myabaku, then dispelling the summoning would allow him to return instantly. Not just within an hour, less than a minute. Minato, you should head to Mount Myabaku directly. Have Jiraiya-sama deliver this to the analysis team, and while you're at it, transfer these two through the toads back to Hidden Leaf Village as well. K pulled out a scroll containing the sealed heads of Hidden Mist Village ninja and shoved it into Minato's arms. Actually. Minato's face turned slightly green at the thought of Fukasaku and Shima's so-called feast. But glancing at the two severely injured captives nearby, he let out a soft sigh. Even though K had read their memories, time constraints meant he had only extracted part of the information. These two still held valuable intelligence. If they weren't transferred through Mount Myabaku, the only other way to maintain secrecy would be to eliminate them on the spot, which was a waste of potential intel. I get it. You're actually looking forward to Mount Myabaku's grand feast, aren't you? Go on, I can handle things here alone. With a beaming smile, K flashed a Might Guy-style thumbs up. That bright, enthusiastic grin almost made Minato lose his composure. Too cruel. Way too cruel. He knew Minato wouldn't dare complain about Mount Myabaku's food in front of the toads. But he really didn't want to eat bugs. Those were insects, for crying out loud. So you have been looking forward to it? I'll go tell Shima-sama right away. Kazuki cheerfully responded, not even giving Minato a chance to protest before vanishing in a puff of smoke back to Mount Myabaku. Wait, no, Minato stood there, frozen, his hand half raised in protest. What did he even say? Nothing. Hold on to that scroll. And make sure to eat well and drink plenty, K said with a grin, waving him off with a look of pure amusement. Sigh. Minato let out a deep sigh, resigned to his fate as he summoned Gumma, a massive toad that took up most of the room. The toad swallowed the two wounded captives whole before disappearing with a released summoning, taking them straight to Mount Myabaku. Before Minato could say anything else, the sensation of the reverse summoning took hold. With a pained expression, he took several deep breaths, preparing himself mentally. At least Jiraiya would be there with him. Clenching his teeth, he agreed to the summoning. Poof. As Minato disappeared from sight, smirked before eagerly turning his attention back to testing the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Following the method he had learned from the scroll, he closed his eyes, attuning himself to the power of space and guiding his chakra to merge with it. Moments later, he pressed his palm against the outer surface of a nearby teacup. A circular marking appeared on the cup. It was a cross with arms bent at right angles, each arm rotating 90 degrees in a clockwise direction. The symbol was symmetrical, with arms of equal length rotating from a central point. Compared to Minato's space-time coordinates, this marking felt far more distinct, the spatial connection much clearer. His lips curled into a satisfied smile. But the longer he stared at it, the more he felt something was off. This marking. Damn it. Isn't it? I need to change the design. Chapter 18, Friends who teleport together, suffer together. After engraving his own redesigned Flying Thunder God marks onto 2 teacups, He maintained his hand signs, carefully sensing the spatial markers with high precision as he attempted to perform the Flying Thunder God. He guided his chakra along a specific chakra path, using his personal Flying Thunder God marks as an aid. With his natural talent for ninjutsu, combined with the enhancement from the trait, Shout and It Comes, which amplified his chakra control, and Spatial Insight, which provided high compatibility with space-time ninjutsu, he quickly grasped the technique. After only a few failures, he successfully completed his first spatial teleportation. It's like stepping through one door and entering another. Spatial jumps are actually this simple to achieve. Obirama was truly a genius. A deep admiration filled as he thought about the technique's creator. To have developed such a ninjutsu in his youth, slain Izuna, who was a wielder of the Mangekyō Sharingan, and left behind countless forbidden jutsu in Hidden Leaf Village. If Obirama hadn't died so early, who's to say he wouldn't have surpassed even Hashirama? With each activation of the Flying Thunder God between the two spatial markers, quickly familiarized himself with the sensation of space jumping. At first, the technique required several seconds of preparation, but after just a few dozen practice attempts, the time had already been cut down by more than half. However, the chakra consumption was brutal. Feeling his chakra drain like floodgates bursting open, his whole body tingled from the strain. In terms of jutsu ranking, the Flying Thunder God jutsu wasn't actually that energy-consuming. A single short-distance teleportation within 10 meters, only involving one person, used just a bit more chakra than casting a C-rank fire-style, Great Fireball jutsu. But the problem was to only teleports once in a battle. Take Pikura's fight against the Hidden Mist Village ninjas as an example. If 10 or even 20 Flying Thunder God kunai were thrown, who could guarantee that each kunai would land near an enemy? Combat wasn't just about teleporting close to an opponent to launch an attack, it also required dodging enemy strikes and repositioning the Flying Thunder God kunai. Even in an ideal scenario where every enemy was killed upon first engagement, at least 30 teleportations would be needed per battle. Firing off 30 C-rank Great Fireball jutsu in rapid succession would exhaust a typical Jonin's chakra in minutes. Even was starting to feel the drain. Despite having the Transmigrator trait, which greatly boosted his spiritual energy, 7 to 8 times higher than a normal Jonin, and a body strengthened through years of training, making his chakra reserves roughly 3 times that of an average Jonin, he still found it hard to sustain. In the original story, even a post-time skip Kakashi, weakened by the burden of his Sharingan, had chakra levels slightly below the Jonin average. Chakra storage. Ultra-fast reactions. Rubbing his chin, he realized that to fully unleash the power of the Flying Thunder God, he would likely need 2 more traits. A vast chakra pool would significantly increase the technique's sustainability and margin for error. Meanwhile, reaction speed far beyond that of ordinary ninjas would directly raise the technique's upper limit. The pace of ninja battles was incredibly fast. For the strongest fighters in the shinobi world, the openings and weaknesses they revealed during combat were fleeting, disappearing in an instant. With ultra-fast reactions, he could seize those fleeting weaknesses in battle, drastically reducing the number of teleportations needed and minimizing the risk of getting countered due to predictable movements. Chakra storage is fine, just a blue trait. If I get the chance, I'll copy a higher tier 1. But ultra-fast reactions? That's a must-have. Without it, I'll be like Kakashi using Chidori without a Sharingan, fast as hell but running blind. TCH, now I get why Obirama didn't massacre enemies left and right like Minato with a chain of Flying Thunder God teleports. Guess even he couldn't react fast enough. As these thoughts ran through his mind, he continued practicing the Flying Thunder God jutsu. He only stopped when his chakra reserves dropped below half, taking a moment to deal with the 2 teacups engraved with his Flying Thunder God marks. This was not a technique he intended to reveal until he could wield it smoothly in actual combat. At the end of the day, ninjutsu existed to kill. Showing off prematurely would only alert potential enemies. Besides, his mastery of yin release was already enough to dominate any opponent below Kage level. If he had been in Pikure's situation earlier today, facing that ambush, with his full power unleashed and the unpredictable nature of yin release, he could have wiped out half of them in the first exchange. Cleaning up the rest would take a little effort but wouldn't leave him injured or struggling. No need to wait for reinforcements, no need to end up battered and bruised. After all, whether it was high-level secret techniques from the Yamanaka clan or various kanjutsu, they were all designed to crush weaker opponents effortlessly. A sudden burst of intense spatial fluctuations rippled from where Minato had left. A thick chakra smoke erupted in the room. Pale-faced and looking like he had been corroded by some unspeakable force, Minato stumbled back into the room, one hand gripping the wall, the other clutching his stomach. His expression contorted in pain, as if he were barely holding something back. "You can't be serious." He blinked at his friend, half of his usual teasing mood vanishing at the sight of Minato's suffering. Red ones. Green ones. Purple. Pink. Long ones. Oval ones. Ugh. Minato barely got the words out before his mind was flooded with images of the feast from Mount Myabaku. He nearly vomited on the spot. Why not think of something better? Insect protein is 6 times higher than beef. Tastes like chicken. Crunchy? Ugh. You know what that damn Mount Myabaku feast is like. Ugh. You're the one who believed Jiraiya's nonsense and signed that contract. What's done is done. If you can't change it, why not just lie down and enjoy the ride? Ugh. Minato couldn't even finish his sentence before he bolted to the bathroom, where the sounds of violent retching soon followed. When he finally dragged himself back to the living room, looking completely drained, clapped his hands. "Alright, now that you've emptied your stomach, let's think about what to eat for dinner." "I haven't eaten yet." "You're a demon." Minato's already broken expression shattered further. He genuinely couldn't understand. At what point in his life had he messed up so badly that he believed was a good person and willingly became his friend? All these years, how many disasters had he suffered because of this menace? Sob. Chapter 19, The Sword That Broke the Peace. Outside the town, the group of Hidden Mist Village ninjas, led by Fuki, had barely managed to fend off the Hidden Sand Village ninja under Pikure's command. After the battle, they returned to their original ambush site. "Captain, there are no signs of prolonged combat. Every kill was executed in a single strike. Judging by the wounds on their necks, it was likely done by someone highly skilled in wind style." One of the Hidden Mist Village ninjas, who was an expert in field investigation, reported his findings to Fuki. "Which direction did the enemy escape?" "The battlefield was too chaotic from our previous fight. We can't determine that." "No other clues?" "And no." A chilling killing intent spread from Fuki, making the reporting ninja break into a cold sweat. Seeing his subordinate's fearful expression, he let out a dissatisfied snort. He then reached into his robe and pulled out the summoning scroll for his massive blade, Saimata. With a quick slash across his still bleeding forearm, he formed a series of hand seals before pressing his palm against the summoning contract at the center of the scroll. A thick cloud of chakra-infused smoke billowed up. Yet, the massive blade that should have appeared in response remained absent. A sinking feeling gripped his heart. Refusing to believe it, he performed the summoning jutsu again. The scroll at his feet remained unresponsive. Fuki grabbed the head of the subordinate beside him and slammed it into the ground. The rage burning in his chest made him want to crush the man's skull with a single punch. Repeated failures against Pikura had already put him under scrutiny from the village's higher-ups. If Saimata was truly lost, he would be forced to answer for it. "This is your last chance. Find the bastard who stole Saimata, or I'll crush every bone in your body, inch by inch." "Why yes." The Hidden Mist Village ninja, his nose broken and face covered in blood, was terrified beyond belief. He could only nod frantically in response. The rest of the Hidden Mist Village ninjas quickly scattered, combing through the battlefield for any trace of the enemy. As they distanced themselves from Fuki's fury, they could only pray to find something. Otherwise, that anger would undoubtedly turn on them next. In a small, inconspicuous house within the town, a Hidden Sand Village ninja, disguised as a civilian, carefully suppressed his presence while moving about as if he were an ordinary resident preparing dinner. Beneath the house, in a hidden basement, Pikura and her remaining subordinates tended to their wounds with the help of a medical ninja. Despite breaking through Kiri's encirclement and disrupting their plans, drawing their fire long enough for her team to counterattack, the battle had still cost them lives. Wounded and exhausted, they were in no condition to travel far. In such a state, the open wilderness was too dangerous. Blending into the crowded town was their best option. Knock, 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 knock. A rhythmic sequence of knocks echoed against the wooden door. Hearing the correct signal, the hidden sand village ninja standing guard relaxed slightly before opening it. Pakura-sama, something's wrong. The hidden sand village ninja who entered wasted no time in reporting. After their battle with Kiri, he had been the least injured and had returned to the original ambush site under Pakura's orders. But instead of finding any trace of their allies, he had stumbled upon headless corpses of hidden mist village ninjas, which was a deeply unsettling sight. There were no signs of large-scale jutsu, no chaotic footprints or marks from close combat. Every single enemy had been killed in one precise strike. He knew for certain that Akesaburo, who had stayed behind due to his injuries, could never have achieved something like that, even at his peak. A third party? Pakura narrowed her eyes. Her instincts, sharpened by years of walking the line between life and death, sent a warning through her mind. Without hesitation, she sat up and looked at her team. It's not safe here anymore. We're leaving. Yes. They responded in unison, quickly gathering their weapons and supplies. Using the transformation jutsu to disguise themselves as ordinary civilians, they hurried out of the basement. Just as they were about to merge into the crowded street, a strange yet familiar sound of flowing water reached their ears. Pakura's gaze snapped toward the source of the noise. Small sharks, wrapped in swirling currents, were swimming straight toward them. Damn it. Someone didn't conceal his scent properly. Cursing inwardly, she knew there was no point in reprimanding anyone now. She raised a hand, signaling her team to stay alert. She didn't understand why the hidden mist village ninjas, after their earlier skirmish, had tracked them down again. The unspoken rule between them had always been to avoid large-scale battles within a town. Any major destruction would force even the most cowardly feudal lord of the Land of Tea to lodge a complaint against the daimyo of the Land of Water and the Land of Wind. Given the tangled web of alliances and kinship among the daimyo, this would inevitably bring diplomatic pressure onto both villages. Normally, once discovered, the hidden mist village ninjas would have lost their chance to use poison mist, illusions, or silent assassinations. At most, they would hurl some threats before retreating. But Fuki was far beyond reasoning at this point. The moment he spotted the hidden sand village ninja, his rage exploded. Water style, water fang bullet. Spiraling currents formed before him, launching water bullets at breakneck speed toward Pakura's team. Even though some hidden mist village ninjas hesitated, they knew the truth. If they didn't help Fuki retrieve Samada, they wouldn't even have to wait for the village's punishment. Their own captain, the strongest among them, would kill them first. He had never shown mercy to his own men. Kunai and shuriken sliced through the air, aiming straight for the hidden sand village ninjas standing in the alley. Water-style techniques followed close behind, surging from the hands of the hidden mist village ninjas. Pakura's pupils contracted. They had completely miscalculated Kiri's intent. Forced into a hurried retreat, her team barely managed to counter with defensive jutsu. Boom. Boom, boom. The clash of techniques sent shockwaves through the town, deafening explosions ripping through the night. Terrified screams and frantic cries shattered the peace that had settled after dusk. Ken Minato, who had just finished dinner, turned their heads toward the battle raging only a few hundred meters away. Their brows furrowed at the sheer devastation. In that instant, they both understood, they had severely underestimated the importance of Samada. If not for the sudden disappearance of the blade, both sides, who had been carefully restraining themselves throughout their conflict, would never have risked such reckless destruction within the town. Should we just give them back the sword? Should we just kill them all instead? The two spoke at the same time. After a brief silence, they exchanged glances, one exasperated, the other unimpressed. A moment later, Minato gave in with a sigh, choosing to go along with his friend's plan. Chapter 20, Chaos by Design. Women's helpless screams, children's terrified cries, and the weak pleas of the elderly filled every corner of the town within mere moments. Buildings, already fragile, collapsed into ruins under the impact of ninjutsu. Razor-sharp wind blades and surging waves mercilessly destroyed everything in their path. The dense mist of the hiding-in-mist jutsu continued to spread, shrouding the battlefield in an eerie haze. Under the lead of the rampaging Fuki, the hidden mist village ninjas gradually unleashed their full strength, employing their most proficient battle tactics. At the same time, the hidden sand village ninjas, following Pakura's command, fought back with everything they had, wind jutsu surging through the battlefield, carrying the heat of her scorch jutsu in sweeping waves of destruction. Every ninja fought desperately. Those who had been hiding in the town, originally stationed as reinforcements, could no longer afford to remain in the shadows and had no choice but to join the battle. The already devastated town, caught in the crossfire of powerful jutsu, had become nothing short of a living hell. In the chaos, civilians desperately fled the battlefield. Yet two figures stood still, untouched by the panic, and Minato. They remained motionless, observing their surroundings. "Now, you're from Hidden Sand Village, and I'm from Kiri," stated as he performed a one-handed seal, transforming his appearance into that of a hidden mist village ninja he had captured earlier. His chakra nature leaned toward yin and water. Though he had spent most of his time mastering his clan's secret techniques and Ganjutsu due to his exceptional spiritual talent, he was also well-versed in water jutsu. While he couldn't match the elites specialized in water style, his proficiency far exceeded his abilities in wind, lightning, earth, and fire style, which he could barely utilize at a passable level. Minato nodded slightly. He too used the transformation jutsu, disguising himself as a hidden sand village ninja they had captured earlier. Their mission was a village secret. If possible, he preferred to avoid exposing his identity. With a single-handed seal, activated the mind-body transmission jutsu, linking his mind with Minato's. Now able to communicate telepathically and share their senses, they reached for the kunai in their ninja tool pouches in perfect sync. Clang! Sparks flew as their kunai clashed, creating the illusion of an intense, high-stakes close-quarters battle. Their movements took them swiftly toward the battlefield, where remnants of the thick mist still lingered. A hidden sand village ninja, having just driven back an enemy, caught sight of a familiar figure, a Kesaburo, dressed in tattered, blood-stained bandages, clearly wounded. Relief flashed in his eyes as he instinctively stepped forward, prepared to shield his comrade from the approaching hidden mist village ninja. The hidden mist village ninja opposite him, seeing that he was about to be surrounded, quickly struck a Kesaburo with a heavy blow, forcing him back. Forming hand seals once more, he unleashed the hiding in mist jutsu. Thick fog rose again, swallowing the battlefield in its depths. Using the cover of the mist, he hurried to his comrade's side, instinctively relying on his protection while preparing to unleash a wind-style technique. But before he could finish his hand seals, the kunai in his comrade's hand, infused with razor-sharp wind chakra, sliced cleanly across his throat. TSK. Such a trusting guy, thought to himself, clicking his tongue. Without wasting a moment, Minato used the transformation jutsu again, taking on the identity of the ninja he had just beheaded. With wide-range sensory jutsu as support, they navigated the mist effortlessly, undisturbed by the lack of visibility. They repeated the same trick, taking down another hidden mist village ninja in silence. With their new disguises in place, their deception became even more seamless as they continued to fight their way through the battlefield. The lingering mist, not entirely dissipated by the scorch style, still provided some visual interference. Near undetectable Ganjutsu, the convincingly staged water style, and Minato's expert use of wind style created a chaotic battlefield where neither side had the time to question anything. In less than a minute, the two of them, working in perfect sync, had silently taken out more than 10 ninja. Keep your distance. Someone is using the transformation jutsu to disguise themselves as our allies. Attack anyone who gets too close. Bakura's voice echoed across the battlefield. Unlike the reckless Fuki, her extensive combat experience allowed her to immediately sense something was wrong. Even Fuki, a seasoned Jonin, snapped to attention at the warning. His burning desire to reclaim Saimata was momentarily overpowered by the realization that the situation had turned against him. With what little rationality remained, he quickly retreated and issued the same order to his subordinates. Without chakra to sustain it, the fading mist quickly dissipated into the night air. Under the moonlight, the remaining hidden mist village and hidden sand village ninja instinctively leapt onto the rooftops, standing motionless, eyes filled with suspicion as they scanned their surroundings, wary of both friend and foe. In mere moments, only 4 hidden mist village ninjas remained, including Fuki, while the hidden sand village side, Bakura included, had been reduced to just 5. Among them were and Minato, still maintaining their disguises. Bakura, hand over Saimata. Fuki finally spoke, seemingly remembering what he had come for. Ignoring the heavy losses his side had suffered, he wasted no time demanding the return of his missing blade. You idiot! Can't you see what's happening? We never took Saimata. A third party has interfered in our battle. Bakura gritted her teeth, glaring at Fuki with barely contained rage. She cursed his stupidity. He had seen the battlefield, yet failed to realize that someone else had taken advantage of their fight. Instead, he blindly blamed them and launched an attack on the town. She could already foresee the consequences. Once she returned to the village, not only would she be denied any credit for this mission, but she would likely face severe reprimands. Fuki, the absolute fool. Even roasting him over a fire and slicing him into pieces wouldn't be enough to quell her fury. A low, sinister laugh escaped Fuki's lips. Hey. Fine, then. Very well. Cut your palms. His sharp teeth gleamed coldly in the moonlight as he raised his own hand, preparing to follow through. He hadn't turned his position among Kiri's higher-ups through sheer strength alone. Now, with Bakura's words making things painfully clear, he knew he had been played for a fool. A pulse of invisible, Formless yin released chakra surged outward. Everyone present, except for Minato, who had already known what was coming, felt a sudden, chilling sensation crawl up their spines. Instinct told them to flee, but that strange and overwhelming yin chakra clung to their bodies like a curse, rooting them in place. This is damn Hidden Leaf Village. Fuki struggled against the invisible force finding him, his immense physical strength barely allowing him to twist his neck. His furious gaze snapped toward the exact location where the chakra had emanated. Congratulations, you figured it out. As a reward, you will die. Maintained his one-handed seal, a bright, harmless smile spreading across his face. Chapter 21, A Dead Man's Last Desperate Breaths. The nature of Ken Minato's mission had already been determined. Neither of them could reveal their identities, at least not to the higher-ups of Hidden Mist Village and Hidden Sand Village. If those villages discovered that Hidden Leaf Village was involved in their conflict, it would only draw more attention. Hidden Leaf Village, already the prime target in every past great ninja war, would once again become the center of hostilities. If that happened, they would inevitably face questioning from Hidden Leaf Village as leadership. Meanwhile, with the disappearance of Seimata, Fuki was already showing signs of losing control. His reckless and indiscriminate combat within the town not only intensified the tension between Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Mist Village but also accelerated the progression of the war. Moreover, if Seimata's whereabouts were revealed, it would expose Ken Minato. At this point, unless they could covertly return Seimata to Fuki under a plausible excuse, there was only one other option: eliminate him. They had to ensure that the blame for Seimata's disappearance was placed squarely on Hidden Sand Village. We can talk. As long as you return Seimata, this incident will have nothing to do with Hidden Leaf Village. Fuki's mind raced. As one of Kiri's Anbu leaders, he possessed a wealth of intelligence and knew far more than the average ninja. The mind disturbance stance performance jutsu required the target to remain completely still to activate, and a single mistake would leave the user vulnerable. Its difficulty in learning was extreme, and once successfully cast, the victim had almost no chance of resisting. He was at their mercy now. To survive, he was willing to compromise. It didn't matter if it was about Seimata or even the interests of his village. You were supposed to die with some dignity. Couldn't you at least show a little backbone? Shot Fuki a sidelong glance, clearly unimpressed. With a mere thought, the ninjas under the influence of his technique drew their kunai and pointed them at Fuki. Wait. Take Seimata. I won't tell anyone about you. Stop. Stop. I can give you all the intelligence on Kiri. I know a lot. Even classified secrets. Stop. I can provoke a war between Hidden Mist Village and Hidden Sand Village. I can be your spy. No. I'm valuable. I'm a high-ranking officer in Kiri. At that moment, the most despicable side of human nature was on full display. Fuki groveled without hesitation, willing to betray anything to survive. But had long since lost patience with him. The Mizukage was already under Madara's control. Even if Fuki returned as an informant, how much use could he actually be? More likely than not, he'd be discovered and eliminated by Madara in an instant. If that happened, not only would this problem remain unresolved, but he would be exposed to Madara's attention far earlier than planned. The sharp whistle of kunai slicing through the air rang out. Powerless to resist, Fuki could only watch as the kunai pierced his throat, heart, spleen, liver, and kidneys one by one. Notable side character killed, slight interference with the timeline detected, obtained, 1 trait extraction, 1 gifting opportunity. The familiar system prompt chimed just as Fuki drew his last breath. Crazed an eyebrow, instantly realizing something, his system's criteria for recognizing mission objectives and major events were far more flexible than he had assumed. A notable side character, huh? Was Fuki really that significant? In the original timeline, he only had a handful of appearances. His greatest role was indirectly influencing a more important character, Kisame Hoshigaki, which in turn pushed forward certain key events in the story. So, his gaze shifted to the Kunoichi standing to the side, Bakura. The most beautiful back in the ninja world. Betrayed by her own village and turned into a human pincushion. Flipping through his memory palace, he reviewed what he knew about Bakura. He cast a look of pity at her as she pretended to be powerless while secretly gathering her strength. She was, without a doubt, the biggest scapegoat in the entire shinobi world. For a moment, he considered whether taking her out would earn him some kind of reward, but after recalling her tragic history, it didn't seem worth it. In the shinobi world, she was far more well-known than Fuki. Yet, according to the original timeline, her impact on the main story was practically non-existent. She had been loyal to her village, hailed as a hero, only to be betrayed by Hidden Sand Village's leadership and handed over to Hidden Mist Village in exchange for peace. Later, she was reanimated through Edo Tensei, only to face her naive and overly righteous former student, who bombarded her with hypocritical, saintly nonsense until she was forced back into the afterlife in utter frustration. Her fate was even worse in the movie adaptation. She didn't even get a proper scene, appearing only as a lifeless corpse with her bloodline stolen by Hiruko's chimera jutsu. What a tragedy. The most tragic of all tragic figures. For once, was at a loss for words, unsure how to describe someone who had an even more miserable ending than Sakamo. At least Sakamo had a son who eventually understood him. Bakura. If he just eliminated her here, there was no way he'd get any reward. Wouldn't it be better to change things up? The system's reward mechanism clearly correlated with how much he altered the main storyline. If Bakura's fate was drastically changed, given her status in Hidden Sand Village and her strength far surpassing that of an ordinary jonin, she could easily have a noticeable impact on the overall narrative. She caught the Wake's expression flickered between pity and excitement, and for a moment, she was utterly confused. Realization dawned, and she immediately classified him as a complete lunatic. He had just maintained a friendly, harmless smile while controlling a group of ninjas to turn Fugi into a pincushion. Now, he was cycling through different expressions while looking at her. Was he deciding what kind of face to wear while killing her? TCH, this level of psychological distortion. Hidden Leaf Village really did produce some terrifying freaks. Stop messing around. If too many civilians see this, it'll be troublesome, Minato sighed and finally spoke up after watching him remain motionless for a while. Alright, responded, still keeping one hand in a seal, then suddenly intensified his chakra output. Bakura, who had been quietly gathering energy in preparation for a last-minute counterattack, froze. The chakra she had been carefully collecting within her body vanished from her perception in an instant. Her hands moved involuntarily, forming seals. The muscle memory ingrained into her very bones guided her chakra along the pathways she had practiced countless times before. In a flash, searing fireballs erupted from her palms, hurtling straight toward the nearby Hidden Mist Village ninjas. Their terrified faces twisted in despair as they found themselves unable to move. Under K's control, they instinctively threw themselves toward the incoming fireballs while simultaneously forming their own hand seals. A series of water jutsu bypassed the scorching fireballs, streaking toward the stunned Hidden Sand Village ninjas standing on the other side. The next moment, both sides were engulfed by each other's devastating attacks. Chapter 22, Rewriting Her Reality. The Hidden Mist Village ninjas, under the scorching heat, had been reduced to dried-up corpses devoid of moisture. And the Hidden Sand Village ninjas had either been pierced through by water bullets or had their organs crushed by water style, their flowing blood dyeing the lethal currents red. In just a single exchange, aside from Bakura, everyone else had lost their lives. The brutality of the scene perfectly mirrored the aftermath of a deadly clash between the two factions. A few minor adjustments, a bit of work on the details, and it would be easy to mislead any investigation. How were you able to use Scorch style? Minato looked at the only survivor, knowing full well that had left her behind as a scapegoat. He didn't press further, but something puzzled him. She was under the control of K's technique, meaning her body should be entirely under his command. So how had she managed to use Scorch style? Based on the intelligence he had gathered, the Yamanaka clan's secret technique, after seizing control of someone's body, would suppress their ability to perform jutsu. Even among the weaker members of the clan, those controlled through this technique couldn't activate their own jutsu. To achieve such a feat, one would need an extraordinary level of yin release mastery, strong enough to sever the connection between the original consciousness and the chakra within their body. Since chakra is a fusion of spiritual and physical energy, cutting off the original consciousness's influence over their own chakra was far more difficult than simply taking over their body. More importantly, under normal circumstances, the only jutsu a controlled individual could use would be ones the controller themselves had mastered. The controlled person also needed to possess the necessary chakra attributes for the jutsu to manifest. It was true that Bakura naturally possessed Scorch style. But there was no way he had learned it, right? With enough training, certain jutsu become ingrained into muscle memory, turning into an instinctive response. As long as they are guided properly, the body will complete the remaining steps on its own. K's explanation was concise. Ultimately, Bakura's mastery of Scorch style was so advanced, especially her signature technique, that all he had to do was mimic her hand seals. Her body's instincts, refined through countless repetitions, would execute the technique before her brain even processed the command. Muscle memory. Instinct. Minato nodded thoughtfully. Minato, adjust the traces at the scene once more. Check for any overlooked details, then take care of her. Ki issued his orders, then led Bakura, whose eyes were filled with hostility and murderous intent, toward a dilapidated, abandoned house nearby. Yin release had the power to manifest the intangible into reality. Representing spiritual energy, It was capable of performing feats that defied common sense, manipulating the five senses, crafting illusions indistinguishable from reality, detecting chakra over long distances, probing memories, controlling bodies, transmitting emotions and sensations, harming the mind, destroying consciousness, and even altering memories. As the sole individual in Hidden Leaf Village marked with Transmigrator, spiritual power was beyond imagination. With such immense mental strength, Yin Release Mastery granted him abilities that would be inconceivable to others. Take memory alteration, for example. To his knowledge, throughout the entire shinobi world, no one else could achieve this. Even in the future, when Shizue awakened the Mangekyō Sharingan and gained access to Koto Umatsukami, he could only alter a person's will, not rewrite their entire memory. Among the Yamanaka clan, the one with the greatest mastery of the family's secret techniques, second only to K, had attempted to modify someone's memories last year. Not only did the target die instantly, but he himself suffered a severe backlash from Yin Chakra. His mind was damaged, and he was bedridden for over 2 months. This kind of memory alteration, for now, only could do it. Laying Picker down on the tattered bedding inside the small house, he formed a single-handed seal, allowing his Yin Chakra to swiftly invade her mind. Extracting fragments from his memory palace, he pieced together a narrative from the memories he had accessed while working in the analysis division. A scattered collection of intelligence reports, woven together, transformed Picker's past, her new identity now that of a Hidden Leaf Village spy embedded in Hidden Sand Village since childhood. He seamlessly integrated scenes of secret meetings and exchanges of information, reinforcing her fabricated identity as a spy. Special attention was given to modifying her most recent memories, erasing any trace of himself and Minato. Every loose end was tied to the already dead Fuki, ensuring he took the blame. With the final step approaching, carefully formed a series of intricate hand seals, using the memory-erasing seal Kushina had once taught him. As the long and complex sequence of seals came to an end, he pressed one hand lightly against Picker's forehead, temporarily sealing the rewritten memories deep within her mind. A small gap was deliberately left in the seal, ensuring that over the next 1 to 2 years, the false memories would gradually resurface. The human brain possesses a remarkable ability to self-repair and reinforce fragmented memories. By the time the seal fully dissolved, Picker would wholeheartedly believe she had always been a Hidden Leaf Village spy. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, grinned in satisfaction. The Uzumaki clan's memory sealing jutsu concealed the alterations flawlessly within the brain itself, far more reliable than the memory concealing manipulative sanjutsu, which required needles to be inserted directly into the brain. Even if Picker were subjected to Hidden Sand Village's most advanced secret techniques for mind probing, they wouldn't find anything amiss. Major alteration to a supporting character's fate, slight interference with a timeline detected, obtained, 1 trait extraction, 1 gifting opportunity, so that's the reward for a major alteration? So generous. Nearly rolled his eyes at the notification. He grumbled internally for a while. He had gone through all this trouble and this was the same reward as simply killing Fuki? Feeling a bit bored, he activated all trait extractions. Obtained, Water Style Mastery, Blue, Always Smiling, White, Water Style Mastery, Blue. Years of rigorous training have granted you precise control over the properties and forms of water style techniques. Learning, molding, modifying, and creating water style jutsu now come with increased efficiency. The casting speed, power, and effectiveness of water style techniques are significantly enhanced. Always Smiling, White, your facial muscles and nerves have permanently adapted. No matter what expression you attempt to make, your face will always appear to be smiling. Slight increase in charisma. Slight increase in likelihood of depression. Oh? A blue trait. X's mood instantly improved as he read the description of Water Style Mastery. The exhaustion from using high-level yin release techniques to rewrite memories vanished in an instant. People often underestimated blue-tier traits. Even someone like Danzo had spent his entire life striving for mastery over wind style, only to barely achieve wind style mastery as his peak accomplishment. Yet with just 1 random draw, had obtained a power that would take a talented ninja an entire lifetime to master. What was there to complain about? As for Always Smiling? Who the hell would want to be stuck with a constant smile? And increased depression risk? Yeah. No thanks. Without hesitation, he immediately activated Water Style Mastery. Chapter 23, Be careful what you wish for. A faint hum echoed in his mind the moment Water Style Mastery activated. A surge of training memories and ninjutsu experience flooded in all at once, rushing toward the palace of his consciousness. The sheer volume of information pouring in so suddenly made his head swell, and he couldn't help but let out a muffled groan of discomfort. Ugh. You know. You once told me that turning back before it's too late is wise, and that admitting one's mistakes is a great virtue. Minato's voice came from outside the rickety door. What? What the hell is he talking about? Was he seriously suspecting that something unspeakable had happened between him and Pakura in the room? Was momentarily stunned before realization hit him. This pure-hearted sunshine of a man had actually been corrupted by that old pervert Jiraiya. Damn it. Sure, Pakura was indeed beautiful. Her figure was top tier, and that back of hers added an extra touch of allure. She was undoubtedly one of the most stunning kunoichi in the shinobi world. But he wasn't that desperate. He opened the creaky wooden door and yanked Minato inside. When Minato realized he had completely misunderstood the situation, his face turned red all the way down to his neck under K's exasperated glare. Awkwardly, he scrambled to change the subject. So? Is everything settled? What do you think? Ground out through clenched teeth. The truth was, this whole situation had been a last-minute decision. He had impulsively set out to claim Samada. He had even planned for Minato to cover for him in the mission report once they returned to the village, concealing what had happened today. But now, he had questions. Did Jiraiya take Minato along when he snuck off to red light districts? Had Minato actually stood guard while that old bastard was up to his debauchery? Otherwise, why would a simple groan make him jump to that kind of conclusion? Ugh! A soft, pained moan came from the unconscious Pakura. Minato, who had just barely managed to cool down, instantly flushed an even deeper shade of crimson. Curled his eyes, gestured for a quiet retreat, and without hesitation, the two vanished from the small hut. Not long after they left, Pakura stirred awake, groaning as she clutched her throbbing head. Wearily, she surveyed her surroundings, and as the memories of what happened before she blacked out came flooding back, she rushed outside. The battlefield lay before her. It was a grim, desolate land filled with the corpses of her fallen comrades and the hidden mist village ninjas they had fought. She stood frozen for a long time. Only when villagers, cautiously emerging now that the battle had ended, began returning to check the area did she snap out of her daze. Swallowed by grief, she stumbled forward and started the solemn task of gathering her fallen comrades, preparing them for burial. Leaning against the railing of the three-masted ship heading back to Hidden Leaf Village, Minato let out a long sigh. Perhaps it was empathy for those who had suffered the same fate, or perhaps it was the sheer depth of Pakura's sorrow that had left such a lasting impression. Every time he recalled the sight before their departure, a lingering weight pressed against his chest. It was a quiet, suffocating melancholy that refused to dissipate. Still thinking about Pakura? Glanced at Minato, who was sighing heavily. He walked over, leaned casually against the ship's railing, and closed his eyes, letting the sea breeze brush against his face. What do you think ninjas exist for? For conflict. You really have no fear of crushing my ideals, huh? Minato gave his friend a speechless look. He knew, deep down, that K's words were brutally honest. No matter how ninjas first came into existence, no matter what ideals they claimed to uphold, the truth remained the same: conflict was at the core of their existence. For thousands of years, war had been the constant theme of the shinobi world. Wealth, desire, power, revenge, admiration, greed. Every ambition bred conflict, and conflict led to violence, bloodshed, and death. The reason ninjas had grown stronger throughout history, surpassing warriors, monks, exorcists, and other combat professions to become the dominant force in the world, was simply because they excelled at fighting. Stop overthinking. You pity her, but what about the civilians who died in the crossfire? The innocent bystanders whose homes were destroyed? He yawned lazily, his tone indifferent. Having lived in this world for over a decade, he still found it difficult to empathize with ninjas. To him, the ninja villages were more like a fusion of mercenary groups and terrorist organizations, wielding immense power, disregarding human life, and steeped in violence. 5-year-olds were sent to academy to be brainwashed and trained in the art of killing. By the time they turned 12, they were expected to graduate and carry out missions, guided by instructors who made sure they had shed blood early on. In his past life, no professional military force would ever engage in something so utterly insane. Ninjas, huh? Minato let out another long sigh. Rather than feeling comforted, he only seemed more disheartened. A long time ago, he had asked what it would take to achieve world peace. Had given him a straightforward answer: peace, even if temporary, could only exist under 3 conditions. First, possessing overwhelming power, like Hashirama, to forcefully suppress all opposition and maintain order through sheer strength. Second, waging a unification war, merging all nations and ninja villages into one entity, standardizing language, laws, and education under a single rule. Third, introducing a common enemy, an external threat powerful enough to endanger the entire shinobi world, forcing all factions to unite. Minato considered himself an optimist, but the idea of having strength on par with Hashirama was something he could hardly fathom. As for a unification war, aside from Danzo, No one in Hidden Leaf Village's leadership would even entertain such an idea. And even if they did, Hidden Leaf Village's current strength was nowhere near enough to pull it off. That left only the last option. If only Madara were still alive. A man who could rival the first Hokage should have had enough power to threaten the entire shinobi world, right? Exclamation mark stiffened. Bro, what the hell are you saying? Madara is still alive. Right now, everyone was still in their early stages of development, growing at a steady pace in a relatively low-stakes environment. Could he not just play it safe and progress normally? This was not the time to stir things up. If Madara really got the urge to start dancing again and decided to drop a meteor just to make a point, would Minato believe him if he said he could literally die on the spot? Chapter 24, The Summoning Island. How strong was Madara? Nowadays, most people in the shinobi world didn't have a clear understanding. After all, the third Hokage, in order to secure his position, significantly altered the curriculum of the Ninja Academy and distorted the history of the ninja world. He even shamelessly claimed himself to be the strongest Hokage. Even someone like Minato, who had heard the true history from only had a very fragmented understanding of it. Madara. That was a man who, even in his Mangekyō Sharingan state, could single-handedly beat up the 5 Kage and the entire Shinobi Alliance. If it weren't for the Sage of Six Paths secretly supporting them from behind. If Naruto and Sasuke hadn't been like undying cockroaches, repeatedly getting back up. And if Black Zetsu hadn't struck at the most critical moment and literally pulled out his heart. Madara would have been the final winner. With just their fragile bodies, facing Madara head-on at this stage, even if it were the weakened version of Madara, it would basically be a death sentence. Just thinking about it makes me realize how damn dangerous this world is. First, there's Madara, and then there's the Otsutsuki clan. This is way too hard. Silently complained in his heart. If it weren't for the system backing him up and his strength rapidly increasing, he'd seriously consider running off to some remote mountains and living a secluded life. As he was lost in thought, a sudden spatial fluctuation came from Minato, who was standing beside him. Mount Myabaku is performing reverse summoning jutsu? I'll go check it out. Sensing the summoning, Minato raised his hand and stabbed a flying thunder god kunai into the ship's railing. Then, in a puff of chakra-infused smoke,